everybody, welcome back to another episode of Pointless Discourse. Today we have a special episode where we have a guest with us. So this week we'll have myself, Hoppocalypse, DPayne.
Hello.
And SystemChalk.
Hello.
Here to talk about the topic sci-fi movies. We probably still have one announcement this week, right?
Yeah. For you guys, I guess technically two. If people missed Saturday's episode, for people who only listen to this recorded, we streamed this live on our Twitch channels. However, we had to record it on Tuesday because I will be busy all day Saturday with a charity event. And so, yeah, so that's why we're doing it today, and why we also brought in a guest to make it extra special and fun. But the only other announcement that we have is that August 1st, when we will be back on our normal schedule, we're doing the community cast. So if people have any questions, quizzes, any kind of, and the questions could be really about anything, like maybe you want us to clarify something that we already answered, maybe ask us stream questions, YouTube, or just like, I don't know, DPayne, how do you get your hair to look like that? I don't know the answer to that either, but that question can also be asked, and we will be willing to answer them. Just send it to us. If you guys are listening to this later, you can go to the Twitter, Pointless Discourse, twitter.com/pointlessdiscourse, or if you watch the streams, you know how to get in touch with us, whether it's Discord or whatever works. So
please ask questions and clarifications for my answers, because I really need to raise my profile, and the booking fees these people are giving me are eye-watering. It's amazing.
I told you not to talk about that. Cut the mic. So, yeah. I believe that was the only announcement.
Okay. So we start off every episode like we do. We roll our dice to determine the topics we'll be talking about and in which order. So I rolled...
First, we're going to...
yes, the interview part.
A little bit different this week.
I'm in such a rhythm.
I don't know. I'll just reveal who I am through my answers.
Yeah. Another thing that we're doing, since, once again, we have SystemChalk, who graciously said yes to coming on to the podcast. So yeah, for people who don't know, the voice that you hear is SystemChalk, and he's a man of mystery, or woman. I don't know. We don't have picture confirmation.
M. Night Shyamalan level plot twist if this voice is a woman, but I have actually been called a ma'am over the phone before, which threw me into... No, there's nothing wrong with being a woman, but it did throw me into a small bit of existential despair, because I really do not think that these are particularly feminine qualities of a voice.
Unless you smoked a lot. I don't know. But yeah, so you are also a streamer on the Twitches. Mm-hmm. That sounds like a completely different website on Twitch.
Twitch.tv/SystemChalk. Follow early, follow often.
But if they follow more than once, that means I have to unfollow.
Look at you bringing your logic here. You said you needed to make sure that you had some guests.
I have logic in very
Please
small
follow an odd number of times. Odd as in mathematically
at least once.
Odd, not unusual.
At least once, but not 3.
A number not divisible by 2.
So what do you stream on Twitch? Like, how would you pitch your channel to someone who's never been there?
You mean other than my green eyes and sexual charisma? I mean, I've never really been asked that before. So I really got into streaming because I like sharing games. It's a way that I can just give voice to some stuff that I find interesting. And it's been kind of nice as well, given that I moved from Vancouver to not exactly the East Coast, but definitely Eastern Canada. It's a way that I can sort of keep in touch with people. So I decided to start off light and do Crusader Kings 2, like to teach myself that on stream, and it's all been downhill ever since. But because people tend to talk quite a bit about my vocal qualities, I do have a heavy emphasis on strategy games because they let me talk my way through how I'm playing. Generally, I tend to find that strategy games are rather good for being able to, talk about some of the ideas, particularly turn-based. I saw that you were playing Endless Legend on
Oh
your
yeah.
your channel. So stuff like Endless Legend, or say Age of Wonders 3, or Age of Wonders Planetfall, if we wanted to keep with the science fiction theme. And in fact, I found Hoppocalypse through XCOM Chimera Squad. Um, but it's nice to be able to just sort of say, hey, isn't it interesting how they did this differently? Like, obviously, Endless Legend borrows from, whether they do so consciously or not, that definitely seems to me to live in the shadow of the Age of Wonders series, where you actually have adventurers going into special locations and getting artifacts of power that they can bring in. Being able to just talk about why I find games interesting, some of the ideas that they're playing around with, or if I'm not really feeling in a particularly meditative mood, just to be able to talk about my strategy, whether it's right or wrong. That's kind of my bread and butter. But I have also noticed there's a fair little bit of content I get out of just sharing unusual independent games. So, Cultist Simulator, that just happened to be a game that got a lot larger than I think anybody was really expecting, and because I had a whole bunch of videos for that when they had like a sort of an early access Kickstarter period. I had hours of content ready to go and lots of people wanting to see it. So I'm sure there's a group of people who really would wish I'd streamed that card game forever. So yeah, that's it. If you happen to like hearing me go on at great length like this, we might even get to one of our topics at the end of the sentence. No, like if it's a chance for me to be able to maybe go deep on a few games that I enjoy, and particularly to either be able to share why I like something popular, or to be able to share something that deep down I really just want to hear people say, like, where did you find this cool game from? So then I can be an arrogant ass and be like, because I looked for it.
So, and Hop, if you have any questions, just totally free feel to jump in. Feel? Did I say that? Whatever. Weds. Yeah. So did you like play those strategy games like on your own or what? Or was this just like something like, I want to do this because I want to talk at the peoples?
Yeah, I mean, if I'm honest, actually, I didn't sign up on Twitch specifically so I could become a Twitch streamer. I did it so I could do an Extra Life charity event. And I figured like, there's something really stupid about me asking a bunch of friends and family to donate towards the Children's Hospital so I could sit on my ass and play games for 24 hours, which, that really just sounds like an excuse for me to become a complete degenerate. Um, I figured it would be nice to try and give a return, let's say, for the amount that they were donating, and give them some sort of an artifact, which in this case would be the video. Not that I expect people to watch a 24-hour video, but it's just sort of like, hey, this is something that we did together, and here's my way of giving back, for lack of a better term. But the reception was really warm, and I enjoyed the experience enough that I carried on with it. So I never really made a conscious decision about what game I would stream because it was a charity thing. But I eventually sort of found a little bit of a niche in strategy. One, because I like playing those games, but two, I was streaming at an upload rate of 512 kilobytes, and so things that don't have a lot of movement on the screen all at once is really helpful. And I actually found that this is before affiliates were a thing. It was actually really good for getting people to watch, because there were a bunch of people who really wanted to watch small channels, but because they were on data plans, they couldn't they couldn't watch anything. But I've definitely branched out beyond streaming. So, for instance, some of you might have gone. Thank you for the shout out on your channel, Hoppocalypse. Like, it's not just strategy stuff. Right now, I'm doing Morrowind vodcast. I've never played the Elder Scrolls games before, so I've done 1, 2, and now 3. And I do a dark elf voice during it. So, every once in a while I'll do something off the beaten track.
Don't mind me. I'm stealing Hop shout out command because I never made one. Here you go. Here you guys go.
Yeah. So, how long ago was it when you first started your Extra Life event?
Oh, that's a really good question, actually. I think maybe 3 years ago.
It's been a 3-year Extra Life campaign.
No. I feel a little bad that I haven't done more charity events, but I've always been a little uncomfortable with the idea okay, so this is not like me totally shivving you over the charity event that you're about to do, but I've always been a little uncomfortable, especially from a couple channels I moderated for, of this idea of charity as a means of marketing. And one of the things that sort of made that special for me was, privately to myself, I had like a target, and I would be like, I'd put myself on the hook for the difference of the target, because like, if I'm going to take 24 hours, I could be working those 24 hours and donate that money. Like, I need to actually be generating value of more than this video game holiday I'm taking. So, it hasn't exactly been constant streaming since then, and I would feel a lot better if I did more charity stuff. But given the fact I had these really narrow parameters, and now that I sort of get that I am a streamer, quote unquote, I'm trying to find a way of doing it in a way that I think is adding value that wouldn't already be there. Because I think, especially today, I know on your podcast you've already talked about a few charity things you're doing, particularly in line with mental health issues. In the end, I sort of have to realize that in some cases I'm directing a dollar that already would have gone towards charity, towards something that I've assigned for myself. That's a terrible excuse not to do charity, by the way, but I'm still kind of I'm trying to come up with that equilibrium for myself in terms of finding a way to do it where I feel like I'm using that time as the best as I can, because I have a job, and I know I can, my time is valuable, and I can donate my time, and my money is valuable, and I can work that time and donate it. So that's my excuse.
No, I definitely agree with what you're saying. Like, I think that people that go into doing charity events to get some sort of value for their own channel, whether that's follows, recognition from other people, or something, they're doing it for the wrong reason. Which, like, it sounds like we've been streaming close, or like when you kind of gave a time marker of when you started streaming, and you said before affiliate, which it's the same time I also started streaming. So it's like, there was it was like a lot of time going into it and observing how different people like go and do charity events as well. But no, I also agree with kind of what you were saying, where or maybe I was just misunderstanding, but it's pretty much like any charity event that I do, like, I do think it's an important thing to give some of my own money to it. Like, not so much, like, I know I anonymously donated to the mental health to Write Love on Our Arm one.
Not anonymous anymore.
But no one knows how much it was. So but it's like, but I donated anonymously because like I wasn't doing it to get the recognition or anything, and like I donated that because I knew there was multiple channels that were using that thing, and it's just like I'm like, I'm not donating this to get the recognition from the other people. It's just like I'm putting my own money in, and I have an amount that I'm also going to be adding to the one on Saturday that I can afford. So I do think it's important that, like, if someone is doing a charity event, that it's like, what are the right reasons, and like, is it something that you will put your own money towards? So
and I mean, it's I definitely, I mean, everybody's circumstances are different, right? If you can't donate money, then you can donate your labor, your time. I think there are very few reasons not to be more giving, at least in my case, because I certainly have done reasonably well as far as the the RNG of life is concerned. So I think I definitely don't want to put too much emphasis in terms of why I haven't done charity streams since. But I am sort of the temperament to make sure that if I do a special event, if I do something, I need to make sure that I'm, well, as you say, doing it for the right reasons, but also sort of trying to do it to maximize the impact. And given the fact that the conditions of my Twitch stream are very different from what they were when it was originally making a Twitch account so I could share something related to this event that I was doing. I've been trying to sort of square the circle of of making sure that I don't fall into the bad habits, or I'm just too important to help other causes. that's the short answer. That would have been the one I should have given for quality control point purposes. You can edit out all the nice stuff I said.
No, I do. There's only one editing thing that I've ever did mid-episode, and that's because the questions were out of order and not the same, like for the TFT stream. And that's the only thing that I've actually ever cut out from the middle of the episode. Yeah, I don't know. Do you have any other question to think of, or?
What's your typical schedule for streaming?
Oh, thank you. This is wonderful. You're for doing a better job promoting me than I do. So,
Question.
It's Monday, Wednesday, and Friday, usually 7 to 10. I do allow myself a 1-hour window for starting those, so it'll be between 7 and 8. And I've actually been pushing that a little bit lately. But I am trying to get back to a somewhat more regular schedule. If you like God help you if you did, but if you like the Dark Elf voice, that's Tuesdays, 7 till whenever the video ends. But Monday, Wednesday, Friday is most reliable, and especially Friday I do sort of original or off the beaten track stuff. Mondays and Wednesdays are usually spoken for from other. I get too many people like offering keys, so I need to
Here's my car. What time zone was that for people who...
Oh, that's Eastern time. Yeah.
Eastern time. There you go.
Everyone does not live in the same geographic location. Yep. Yeah, 7 o'clock Eastern time, so an hour 45 minutes ago, but on a Monday, Wednesday, or Friday.
Yep. Okay. That was actually my next question was what your stream schedule and all that. So yeah, guys, definitely check out SystemChalk, and it sounds like a little get to know. Like, I don't know.
Hopefully I'm more interesting than the answers that I gave, and then they'll be like, my God, this man has interesting opinions on science fiction. I wonder if he has a Twitch channel. Let's see what
I think it was good. Like, I don't know, it was like, it was still good. Like, just hear, like, you do strategy games. Like you mentioned, like the only reason I started doing strategy games, like it's a co-stream with a friend off Mixer, and we're just like, we pretty much use those Thursdays to do what you use your strategy games for. It's just to like he says, it's like pretty much like a podcast that we don't put on any other actual place. And so
I mean, I really got into strategy for the women, but that's a boring
now I'm just thinking of my Civ 6 run, where we have a thing where we go and find a theme to name all our cities after. And so it was Korea, and so I decided to name all my cities after different K-pop groups. And then I made K-pop the religion, to where we took over the world with the power of K-pop.
Wonderful.
It was great. We had it was the first time I ever did religious wars. But yeah. Okay, so yeah, guys, that's SystemChalk. That's all you need to know about him. And
I wouldn't go quite that far.
No, that's all that you need.
That's
all you need to know. He talks and plays games.
Yeah.
Oh, I guess another question. Do you have any other social media that you have stuff for? I know a lot of streamers have like YouTubes and etc.
Yeah. So I mean, my YouTube's really just a place for dumping my VODs, and it's a shame because that's actually seeing quite a bit of growth, and I wish I could do something more regular for people, but I mean, life is a thing occasionally. But what would mean the world to me if you really want this sonorous voiced individual to be happy? I have a blog, SystemChalk.ca, and I am told that people like controversial opinions. You will see devoutly held opinions on there. Some of which may be frustrating, but many of which will at least be original. So I do occasionally talk about movie stuff, but I don't like them as much. It has been very focused on games, and there's one that I think is particularly good called Your EA Takes Suck, which people get really angry at, but nobody's really been able to say why it's wrong.
Oh, I just thought of another question. It's mainly because you mentioned Cultist Simulator. Is that made by the same people who did like the Flash games of, I think it's like God and Devil Simulator?
I don't think so.
Okay. Because when I looked at the gameplay, it's very similar. It looked like, where you pretty much combine. Actually, well, I never actually played Cultist Simulator, but in like the God and Devil Simulator thing, you pretty much have like a whole bunch of cards, and you keep combining them all to get like different elements and different things. You just create a whole bunch of different stuff until you discover everything.
So it's possible that was an inspiration, because I did hear an interview with them, and they were talking about a few idle games that were sort of touchstones for the design. And what you're describing sounds vaguely familiar, but it's the thing is, of course, is you make one, and then there's going to be a few people who take that idea and run with it, and then all of a sudden you have to hear more than a few people are like, oh well, it's just an X clone. Like, no, it's a genre, it's a mechanic, it's its own thing. I'm pretty sure Call of Duty can shake off the title of being a Doom clone at this point, but
kind of Kane's staple.
But yeah, it's a pretty unique game. But what you're describing is largely correct. It's a game I mean, just the same way that there isn't a For Dummies book, for building a cult or understanding, the great mysteries beyond. That's the turn off and the turn off feature. Because if you don't really like banging your head against stuff and figuring out how it works, that game is going to be excruciating. But it's kind of hard to say that being presented with arcane mysteries and very little understanding about what's going on, you're either in grad school or you're playing Cultist Simulator. And now we know the graduate students. But yeah, I mean, it's and you die of starvation, again, completely indistinguishable from university experience past that. But yeah, it's a very unique game, and I know it's following in some other traditions that have been put down from idle games, but it seems to package it in a very a very original way that caused it to stand out in what's obviously a very crowded space.
All right. Well, on that note, shall we roll some dice and talk about some science fiction movies?
Yeah.
Well, if I have to.
Okay, well, guys, that's the end of the podcast. Systemchalk enough, and we'll see y'all. We're going to switch over to TFT now. So for everyone that doesn't know, if this is your first time ever coming to Pointless Discourse, or my brain just died, or if this is your first time coming here and you're like, why are these people rolling dice? It's because we roll a d20, a 20-sided dice to find out the order of what we're going in. So pretty much whoever has the highest number is going to go first. And now since we have 3 people, whoever has the lowest number will go last, and then whichever one is in the middle will go in the middle. And then whoever rolled the lowest, whether their number's an even or odd number, will determine if we're going sharing a good list or a bad list. So who wants to share their number?
I gotta roll my number first.
I got a 12.
I've got a 19. Thank you, rolladie.net. Question mark code equals 1 hash exclamation point numbers equals 1 ampersand sides equals 20 ampersand length equals 1.
Well,
actually, we can make this an ASMR sort of thing.
Well, I got
equals 1 ampersand. Sets equals ampersand.
Well, guess what? You get to go first. So.
What'd you get, DPayne?
I rolled a
I'm
natural
sorry,
11.
DPayne. I'm
A
afraid I
natural
can't do
11.
All right, so with an 11,
I rolled a natural 11. That's odd. So we're doing bad first. So, and SystemChalk, you got to start it off.
All right.
So, we normally do our runner-up. So
a runner-up. Oh, interesting. Okay.
Yes. So we do our runner-up then, because I think we're doing pretty decent on time.
Yeah, it's actually kind of funny because my runner-up was really not that important, but
it's all good.
It gives you guys a chance to to speak, because as I'm sure everybody in chat has noticed, I do not understand brevity. But so I really struggled with the idea of bad movies because, like, to a certain extent, like, I know enough movies that I can tell you, like, the worst movie I've ever seen is a thing called Black Devil Doll from Hell. Now, that's not a sci-fi movie, but if I actually said that as my least favorite movie, nobody learns anything, because the likelihood of you finding Black Devil Doll from Hell anywhere is incredibly remote. And then I can do... Sorry?
I heard it here.
Yeah, you heard it here. That is, like... In addition to being offensive in all the wrong ways, it is just thoroughly incompetent. So then you go for, like, popular bad movie choices, and it's like, do we really need to relitigate why Plan 9 from Outer Space is bad? I know I said that in the warm-up, but you can't let that good material go to waste. So it's like, then that's just not original. And then I could be like, oh, well, this is really popular, therefore I'm gonna, like, dump on that. And I would think it's a good movie, but it'll get people talking, and that's disingenuous. And there's enough of that on Twitch anyway. So I decided to square that circle. Yeah, as you can see, I'm my preambles are filibusters. What I decided to do here was talk about overrated science fiction movies. So these are ones where I either feel the hype exceeds what it's bringing to the table, or just generally ones where there seems to be a very high degree of fondness for them, which I cannot understand or justify. And the second one's kind of an older movie, and it may or may not be one that people recognize, but it's a Vin Diesel movie called Pitch Black.
Oh, yeah. I do remember that movie. It's such a bad movie.
Is it? Okay, yeah. Well, this is the funny thing. I mean, it spawned a sequel, Chronicles of Riddick. That dump trucks of money, because that was shooting in Vancouver at the time that I would have been, maybe getting my start in. I can't remember the exact timeline. But yeah, like, Riddick was a thing.
I liked it.
You liked it? Yeah.
Of course, I watched it, I think, at the right age. So
yeah,
Please go ahead.
I remember watching Chronicles of Riddick and making fun of that, and then I went and watched Pitch Black, and I was like, "It's how? Why?"
Yeah, and I think this is the big thing, is that Chronicles of Riddick got its sequel, and I mean, in terms of gaming, it's actually a fairly interesting movie, because there was a game called, like, Escape from Butcher Bay or something like that.
Yep,
that was sort of Starbreeze getting their start. They sort of ran off, they split off from Starbreeze that we know now, and they founded a company called Machine Games, which is responsible for the new Wolfensteins, which are exceptional, I think. And I mean, these are people who used to be part of the demo scene, if you know what that is. Just kind of pushing hardware as hard as it can go, back when we all weren't sitting on supercomputers, and you could just afford to do ray tracing because that's your GPU now, and laugh at the poors who don't have it, or something like that. But please don't go out and buy a ray trace card because I said that, for anybody thinking of doing that. But with all that interesting stuff aside, the one thing I keep hearing about Pitch Black is how interesting Riddick is as a character. And it is a supremely forgettable movie. It's the aliens come in, and it's a desperate circumstance, and you know, you gotta let the big bad murderer come out who's got the dark eyes because it's a planet where like the really bad things come out through the dark. It just strikes me as very by the numbers. I'm not entirely sure. You know, Vin Diesel is probably a better actor than he gets credit for. Um, but Pitch Black was an utterly forgettable movie that spawned very big budget sequels. And even critics who say that the movie is forgettable seem to assign a lot of significance to this character who I can't really find all that interest out of. Like if the movie had a lady who's trying to recover her lost daughter because she's been in cryosleep forever, that movie would have been called Aliens, and that movie's awesome. But it's not. It's prisoner does bad things to deal with, you know, other bad things going on. And, you know, I worked in the camera department. I know, you know, the thing you expect from camera is that it looks good. Nobody ever complains about bad movies being poorly photographed, if at least if they're like Hollywood. Don't tell me about the non-union stuff. Those guys don't know what they're doing. But yeah, like I've spent a lot of time talking about a very forgettable movie. I'm glad that you two have at least seen it. But again, I can't fault it as a, you know, I'm sure in terms of something you could, I don't know if you can play it on Netflix or something like that. Depending on your pain threshold, like you may not feel like your time is wasted. But I completely don't understand why that spawned 2 sequels, a video game, and why critics who thought it was a by-the-numbers sci-fi thriller wanted to single out how interesting Riddick was, because I really didn't think that had anything going for it.
I think the only reason people thought it was interesting is because you could see in the dark. Which, so, okay, so this is what I remember of that movie, where there's just like, because like for, what, isn't it for like half the movie? Vin Diesel's just strapped in a chair, just like, hey, let me go. And they're like, no, you're a murderer. Hey, no, you let me go. I'll go fight him. Come on. But then they're just like, and then there's one point it says like, hey, take off my goggles. And it's like, your swim goggles?
They do look like swim goggles.
And they're just like, he takes off his swim goggles. And not even the guns that cover your nose, but like they take off the goggles and they're like, well, what's with your eyes? And he's like, I had my eyes polished so I can see in the dark. Where my brain, like when I saw the movie, I immediately thought of those giant like discs that they put the polished cars on his eye, and I'm like, this guy is the toughest guy I know.
His eyes, he waxed his eyes just to see in the dark.
Yeah, they're just like. And he's like, oh, this hurts. Ow. Where's my car? Family. Wait. Alien.
I can't say that I have, like, there's a lot of movies, good or bad, and I could generally, like, have quotes from the characters, because sometimes, like, if it's a bad movie with a poor character, they have, like, cheesy lines. Cannot say I remember anything from Riddick other than scenes with his glowy eyes and stabbing. I don't remember what kind of voice he used. He probably just used standard Vin Diesel, but like I can't even remember that.
Yeah, actually, so this is exactly why I put it on the overrated list, because how many movies can you think of that spawn that many like sequels and attention and grudging respect from the reviewers, and you can't actually mention like a line of dialogue or memorable scene? It's completely mysterious to me why that movie has the.
Okay, hold on. I'm looking this up. I'm looking up quotes.
You gave a much more impressive summary of the plot than I could. I'm actually really glad that you saw it, because I've gotten more out of Pitch Black having heard your like private moment of the most hardcore man in the world is the one with apparently the really extreme morning routine of polishing his eyes.
Well, it was like a what I believe it was is like how people today in prison will go get eye tattoos. I think that's what it was. It was like a prison thing he did, so that way he didn't like get beat up or whatever. Pitch Black. I don't know. It's been a while since I. Well, that's a young Vin Diesel. 2000.
That's how old it is.
Yeah. Well, the first Pitch Black. I mean, the Chronicles of Riddick definitely didn't come out like right after it, but.
Oh, you want to? Okay, I'm gonna just read the first paragraph. Is a real short one of this review back in 2009. The title of this review is called "A Great Ride." From the opening crash. Oh wow! From the opening crash scene, a classic. Even if it does, wow, I can't even read. Even if it does mess around with the laws of inertia, to the closing scene, this is a pulse-pounding sci-fi horror with the bravada performance from Vin Diesel. The CGI and effects serve the plot, and not the other way around. The critters are fantastic, which I assume that is the things. I came here because I wanted to see quotes. Didn't IMDb normally give quotes from movie?
Normally, yes.
Where's John's? Riddick. Which half? I actually remember that scene.
Yeah, it's like user submitted quotes if they have quotes on there.
Yeah, they're actually wrong half the time. But
that's even better.
Okay. My favorite is when they like point out goofs that were actually deliberately in the movie for a major plot reason. the police officer drops the unicorn at the end of Blade Runner, but there is no possible way he could have known the dreams of Deckard at that time in the movie.
I think my favorite thing is I typed in pitch black quotes. Let me add movie because it's giving me everything but the movie. Oh, Riddick quotes from Pitch Black. There we go.
Okay.
That should give me something. Pitch Black quotes. Hey, Johns. He just escaped from maximum security prison. Fried. Should he stay locked up forever? Johns. That would be my choice. Fried. Is he really that dangerous? Johns. Only around humans.
The fact that these are user submitted makes me wonder why somebody decided to include Fry. You're dancing on razor blades here. Like, this meant so much to someone that they got up from the TV, went over to imdb.com, and added it to the quotes.
Hold on, I got another good one. Okay, the character named Jack. So, can I talk to him now? End quote.
Why?
Well, I'm glad we got all this everything out of Riddick that we could.
I'll be honest with you. I was really expecting that we'd just punt on this one and I'd get to hear your super controversial choices. But,
oh, don't worry. Mine's coming up after.
Hold on.
Hops.
Wait. So, like...
We're waiting.
You two both looked up quotes from this movie and did not return a quote from Riddick.
No. I told you.
No, I did.
Oh, yeah, he did. Yeah.
Which half?
Oh, that one. Yes. You did bring up that one.
Yeah, no, because like the whole movie, he's just strapped in a chair like, hey, let me go. Come on. Hey, you go. You know me? I was from Iron Giant. Let me go.
If Vin Diesel ever winds up making his Hannibal Barca movie, I really hope that is the voice that he uses.
Be perfect.
Others should not see Jerome. Just Guilford Godfrey just voicing over Vin Diesel. Oh man, apparently you can pay him to do intros for stuff. I want to find out how much it costs. He'll be the new intro to the podcast.
That'd be beautiful.
So Hop, what is your runner-up?
All right, my runner-up worst. I don't know if it's just because like I watched this movie at a particular time where I watched another movie before it that I really liked and we immediately followed with this, but it fell flat for me. It's called Her.
Oh, yeah, I know that one.
Yeah, with Joaquin Phoenix in it and Scarlett Johansson. Yeah, the
voice of Scarlett Johansson.
Oh, I'm sorry. Spoilers. No, for me, it was like I watched a great like romance movie right before it, so I think I might have just been in that mood where I was like, oh, everything's great, everything's sunshines, everything's rainbows. Oh, Her, it's in the similar vein, but sci-fi with an AI. All right, let's go. And then to get to the end, and I was like, oh, it's over now.
Thank goodness, no.
And I know a lot of people like. I think people liked that it didn't end in, a super cheesy way, but I just remember getting to a certain point in the movie and I was just like, why did I watch it for so long for it to end like this?
Yeah. That's funny too, because I think that won an Oscar, didn't it?
They have great acting in it.
Won something.
Yeah.
Well, it was a writing Oscar. So the stuff you hated.
Oh, the whole plot. Gotcha. I think maybe if I was in the mindset to watch it again, I might appreciate it more. Cause what was it? Not too long ago, I watched A Marriage Story, and I cried the whole time. So maybe if I'm in a sad mood, maybe I should go back and watch her and really like take it for what it is. I think what I watched right before was I forget the title of it. I think Ruby is part of it, where it's the plot for it is where the guy can like write the girl to life, and they have a whole whirlwind romance. It has one of the actors in it is the kid from Little Miss Sunshine.
I've heard it. I never seen it though.
Ruby Sparks, Ruby something like that.
The name of the actor?
No, that's the movie, because that's what he named like the girl and stuff. But yeah, so I'd watched that right before, okay. And then because we had planned to do a movie marathon, which is a bad idea for me because I will fall asleep in most of any movie. So watching a string of movies back to back, my brain's probably like slowly like shutting off on its own.
So this spawns the question: was it actually a half decent movie? You just fell asleep in the middle of it?
I know. I remember it. I remember a lot of it. I didn't fall asleep because we also decided to do a food marathon, and my stomach was in a lot of pain, and I was just laying on the floor regretting that I had a burrito and a very large muffin and a Chick-fil-A meal within a few hours.
That brings up a different question.
Yeah, that's a whole nother conversation. No, like... So for me, it probably, like, all things considered is a good movie, but for me, it just fell so flat, so then it gives me that overrated feeling where if people talk highly of it, I'm like, yeah, but nothing happens.
Yeah.
I'm actually quite embarrassed to admit, I've enjoyed the stuff that Spike Jonze has done, and I did not realize that he wrote it as well. But this is one of the cases where I've not actually seen the movie. Like, I like Being John Malkovich. That's another like super old one that was good. You know, I feel like it's the sort of thing I should watch, but I suppose in revealed preferences, I'm kind of on Hop's side on this because in the end, I never had the moment to like motivate me to see Joaquin Phoenix's lovely mustache and AI assistant.
Yeah. Like I haven't seen it either, but I know I was listening to a podcast when it first came out where they actually really loved it, and I think what they really liked was the concept of like the technology in the world is like the next step from where, like they were saying, like the next step forward for technology where we are. Like it isn't like a super high tech world, but there is some advancements, kind of like how Logan was. Like where they have tractor trailers that are just like Roombas that are just driving and don't have anybody in there. And it's like these small little technologies, which they thought that was really cool. But they thought it was interesting, like the concept behind it, they thought it was interesting, where this person didn't have, like, I don't know how much connection he had with the outside world. And so he started falling in love with Alexa. So.
Yeah, I mean, from that perspective, it is beautifully written in such where it's sci-fi in a tangible way, I guess you could put it, because it's, I mean, the time it came out was probably when we first started getting like Google Assistant and stuff available on our phones.
Yeah. Was it 2013?
Yeah.
No. Was it? I don't know. I'll look it up.
Yeah, it was. I'm trying to remember how old I was when I watched it. I'm blanking on that. But yeah, it's not.
Oh, it was 2013.
Look at you.
Wow.
Yeah. But its technology was like really close and helped make it a believable world for you to try and help connect with these characters. But I think for me, sometimes when I go into a movie, you hear the synopsis or you see a trailer and you go in with expectations, and then you get to a point and you're just like, I mean, the expectations weren't failed, but sometimes for a movie, I'm like, where's that moment? That moment when I go, aha. And then the movie was just like, nah, we're not giving you that.
Not for you.
It's funny you mentioned that type of story being relevant in a digital assistant age too, because it's funny. I read this really old psychology paper, and I think it was the New York Times had done like a report on it. It's not like I sit down and read psychology journals, but for whatever reason, I knew about this, and it was these weird cases of people who so this is like kind of the advent of online dating. It wasn't quite at like smartphone level, but people meeting online, and this weird phenomena of people finding out that they were effectively falling in love with their computers, that ultimately meeting people was not satisfying, and they were trying to get help to understand why they would build these very deep connections online, but actually meeting the person it would sort of fizzle out. And apparently there was this therapist who went and collected some of these cases and essentially concluded that these were people who essentially had largely fallen in love with their computer rather than the human being behind it. Whether that winds up being some super prescient observation in our benighted time, I'm not sure, but it's neat. Like, I have to wonder whether her is, to one extent anticipating digital assistants, because I don't know when that was a regular thing. I just kind of like use my tech. It's got me in its cocoon, and I like it, and I'll become a cyborg one day, I'm sure, and just not realize or be plugged into the matrix. Or whether it was backwards looking and sort of already realizing what we had lost, and it was just sort of giving a voice to it. But given that I haven't seen it and you didn't find it very worthwhile, that may be an unanswered question. I leave it to you, chat, or dear listener.
Yeah. You have homework. Go watch Her for us.
Yeah, like, it's not... I don't, like, it's one of those things where I can't fault it in a lot of ways. It's just like, I don't know. You go in and hope for the movie to, like, satisfy something for you, and then you leave and you're like, well, I still feel empty inside.
Yeah, I mean,
and it's not the burrito that I have to go use the
I mean, you paid your money to be entertained. I mean, it's as old as Aristotle when he's sitting down and saying, is like, why do we go and watch stuff that makes us feel bad? Like, why is tragedy a thing? It's something that, the creative arts has been tangling with for the longest time. But the one thing that you can't be in any of these is bored. Like, if you're bored, then that is the cardinal sin. They failed you. And whether or not there's like 700 critics waiting, outside with cement-filled milk jugs to beat you if you didn't say that it was great, you can't really change your mind. Like, movies aren't for the smartest or the most erudite. Well, like, smartest and most erudite are probably very similar, but they're not. You don't have to have watched the IMDb top 250 or 500 or whatever to appreciate it. It's like, if you, I know, and you were at $4.99. I'm sorry, DPayne. I just didn't have the heart to tell you until now. I sometimes feel. The only reason I'm going on this rant, one, because I love hearing me talk, and chat has not yet said this guy sucks, please mute him. I sometimes get the feeling that I don't know if it's because it won the Oscar, but you're sort of like, it's actually probably a good movie, but it didn't work for me. But I think you've hit the main reason why it should be on your list, which is it didn't speak to you. They had an opportunity. There's any number of movies they could have watched at that time. You chose Her, and they did not fulfill the contract. Or maybe you snuck in, at which point you're a bad person.
No, I think my friend had a DVD of it. We were all gathered watching it together. So that saved me a little bit of money at least, but it was still my time.
You got what you paid for.
Yeah.
Nothing.
I could have also been disappointed because we almost watched A Girl Who Leapt Through Time, but we switched it to Her. To this day, I still have not watched Girl Who Leapt Through Time, and I hear so many good things about it.
This is going to be amazing if you do like a movie night and this is just a movie that blows your mind and you finally find out what you've been missing all your life. And then you'll just you'll swear an oath of enmity against Her.
You made me watch Her. Who is she? What? Alrighty. Well, so I believe I do have the controversial answer. At least for the runner-up. There was a little movie that came out. I forget what year, but I do remember I got it on Netflix DVD, and there was a lot of excitement for it. It was about space travel and like different dimensions and like weird time things, except I was really bored, and it's called Interstellar.
I didn't watch it. I
Going straight for Christopher Nolan out the gate.
I told you I have the controversial answer this week.
That is on my list to watch, though.
Yeah, I'm with Hop. I haven't seen it yet. I've only seen the fucking memes because of the
okay.
Matthew
So
McConaughey scene.
I will keep it very brief, so that way for people who haven't seen it, aka the other two people in this call. For me, I wasn't a big fan for it because the big plot point, I called it very early on, and the guy that was in there watching it was definitely an older gentleman, very sweet dude, but he's like, oh man, this happened, pay attention. I was like, and like that was all it needed, and then everything just went like fell together. Like, I will admit there are some really neat things. I don't think it's much of a spoiler to say that they go to different planets.
What?
Yep. And guess what? There's stuff on those planets. Oh. But like there was some neat things that happened on the planet, but it was very much, it felt like okay, they would explain something and they're like, oh man, this is why this is happening here, and then they would come back and it's just like, oh my goodness, this happened. It's like, well, yeah, no, duh, because you explained this on the planet. And it's just like, I think if anyone like wasn't into like that, doesn't pay attention to like kind of what people are saying, like the shock value is there for what's happening. But if you are like a little Sherlock Holmes watching the movie, you're just like, oh, okay, well, this is gonna suck for that person later. And so it was, for me, and it could have just been how I watched movies that ruined it, like, and how everyone was saying, like, because all I would hear about this movie was like, they spent 2,000 like hours rendering a black hole, and I'm like, cool, movie still sucked. And yeah, that's all I'm gonna say on it, because I don't want to ruin anything for you guys. But that is my controversial answer. I wasn't a fan of it, but people like it, and that's cool. So yeah.
I was gonna say, to try and either give you enough rope to hang yourself, or possibly to like get you out of this hole that your
I'm okay living in it. I'm okay living in this hole. I
was dug it.
Ask, like, is it really
important? The shovel.
Like, is it really important to you when a movie has a twist? Like, is it kind of like a Kleenex movie where you can only watch it once, and like once you know the twist, there isn't value for it? I'm noticing that it sort of seems to be the crux of your dislike was the fact that you anticipated the twist.
It's the more. So what bothered me was this: when Interstellar came out, I don't know if you guys remember the hype around the movie, but there was a lot of hype from critics and people that watched it alike. Mm-hmm. And then when I watched it, it was like a couple years after, and it was with people who all really loved the movie, and I'm just sitting there and I'm like, okay, so this and this, like, I have no problem, even though I'm not a fan of this movie, there are some cinematically some really good shots in there. There are good things about this movie. It's just like the way I watch movies, like I remember when I was talking with someone about horror movies, like how they don't scare me because I don't go into them as horror movies. I go into them as mysteries, and with a jump scare too. But like the whole, like 9 times out of 10, the horror doesn't get me because I'm more focused on the mystery behind why is this ghost here or something like that. And that's kind of how I go into a lot of movies, which is, well, let's just say the second runner-up was Star Wars. So it's just, but it was, it's just one of those things where if there's going to be a, like, and this kind of goes with my top 2, where there's a lot of hype behind it, and like some things might be predictable, but like I don't know, the story for me didn't seem to back up a lot of the hype, because it was like, it felt like the set pieces where they wanted this kind of like shock because of this certain thing that they said, like it was like, oh no, that makes sense. So I don't know, it was for me. But like there's still some good things in there, and I'm not saying like that everyone, the majority of the people went into this movie and really liked it. For me, I had the opposite effect. So I don't know if I answered the question, but well, I talked a bunch.
I had one comment on Interstellar, but I kind of feel like Hop didn't get much to say during that. And
I was just gonna say that I completely understand where if you solve the twist in the beginning, my suspended disbelief is over. Because sometimes in some movies, like when we're having like a jokey movie night, I'll make a joke, and what was it? I think I talked to DPayne about this previously. There was one horror movie. I made a joke. I was like, hey guys, wouldn't it be dumb if this was the cause? And then I was right. And I was like, I'm mad. I'm spending 2 hours and it turns out my meme is true.
I predicted that. So I never saw The Sixth Sense. I sat down for 5 minutes and I already ruined a movie for my really crappy roommate. So I didn't feel bad. But I was like, do you care if I give you my theory on this movie? I knew nothing about it. And I called the plot point within just watching a 5-minute segment and going back down to my office, and he got mad at me. I'm like, I don't know, guy. It's like, there's signs. Look at the whole picture.
That's the other movie.
Oh, yeah.
I will say one thing I do like from Interstellar is the meme that has like that little maneuver just cost us 50 years, because I kind of think that every time I accidentally double click on MATLAB.
Oh no. MATLAB is such a heavy beast that I will still avoid to this day. Someone at work was like, I could do the work in MATLAB, or I could do it in something else. I'm like, anything else, please, fingers crossed, please.
No. So yeah, that's all I have to say. So, SystemChalk, what is your number one worst movie?
My number one overrated. All right. So
he's excited.
Yeah, no, this one I actually feel pretty strongly about.
It's Interstellar, guys.
Having not said, I was so convinced by DPayne's case in Interstellar
that I changed.
Yeah, I'm gonna ask him the opinions on movies I haven't seen yet. There's a twist that I can get spoiled. No.
Is it Riddick 2?
Yeah, Cloverfield.
I did not watch Cloverfield. I avoided it because the Blair Witch perspective makes me feel ill.
Yeah, so that's one of my complaints about this film.
I saw it so many times in theaters because it came out right when I was allowed to like drive, and I was like, I remember this was like the first time I could go to the theaters without my parents, and I'm like, this movie's the greatest. I think I own it.
Let me explain to you why your youth is a lie. Why that is a terrible movie. It's not even a terrible movie. Like this is the thing. Like they're well wrought. Like it's as a roller coaster, I can't complain too much about it. But there are so many reasons to think this is massively overrated. And just generally not worth it. So there is a movie from ye old days called The Lady in the Lake, and it's based off of it's like a Philip Marlowe so like I think it's Dashiell Hammett wrote it, but and the whole idea was that this was a first-person movie. It's not like what some movies do where it's like all one continuous shot. It's like the perspective is always going to be from the detective, and you are going to see the detective story through the eyes of the detective. I mean, you'd love it, DPayne. This is exactly how you watch horror movies. But
that's how I watch all movies.
Yeah, it's like, it's awesome that they did that experiment, and that movie makes it so clear why movies are not shot that way. And Cloverfield kind of tries to get past this by having the so it's all found footage from this terrible event, and for whatever reason the tape's corrupted, so you get to see some of the stuff that was recorded before, and that's how they sort of break up the action and whatnot. And yet, like, God, there's so many. I actually have this I've got so many targets to shoot at. I don't know what. Okay, so the first thing about the first-person camera thing is I feel like I'm playing a really annoying co-op part in a first-person shooter. You know how you sometimes have these like NPCs who are like, "Hey, wait up." That is Cloverfield's like whole dialogue. It's like as soon as they hit the trigger, like the distance from the object, you've got TJ Miller, who's a scumbag anyway, and then you can talk about why he's a scumbag. You know, goes like, "Hey guys, wait up!" Like without fail, the improv was just like as soon as they hit exactly this many meters away from you, you have to say that. It annoyed the hell out of me. The whole marketing campaign for it. So like a lot of people say it's a J.J. Abrams movie. It's a J.J. Abrams produced movie. He did not direct it, but it's part of this whole other trend I really don't like, which is this whole branding. I mean, this is probably at the height of like the Lost nonsense, where everybody was busy trying to convince themselves that there was some meaning to that television show. I've never watched it, but like I sure know people were really disappointed by the end to find out that maybe some randomly assembled stuff didn't have a meaning at the end. Sorry if you're a Lost fan, but
I never got past season 1.
I did see the ARG that they had an alternate reality game for it, and there was like this whole Slusho thing, which was supposed to be some slushy company, and I'm like, okay, I wonder what this is like. You know, how this is related, like, you know, I'm thinking it's like, okay, maybe there's like some Godzilla connection because it was supposed to be like a Japanese company, but apparently what it is, it's like it's a J.J. Abrams signature. Like apparently in some of the TV shows that he's produced or directed, there's a Slusho reference, and there's a Slusho reference and some other thing that he's done, and it's like, so it doesn't really have any point to the movie. It's just to remind you, you know, this brilliant mind is behind it, and that annoyed me. A lot of people credit it with having a really interesting monster. I don't really have a beef with the monster. It's a monster, but when I think about science fiction monsters, it's actually really disappointing. It like you can do science fiction in the Lovecraftian sense of like, you know, humanity has, you know, they're really trying their best, but it's kind of like watching an infant like run with a microscope or a large hadron collider or something like that. You know, generally you know that they're not going to be able to make any use out of it, and it's probably a really good thing, because if we ever actually found out what was going on, it would be so terrifying to us, we'd immediately volunteer into a new Stone Age. So, you know, this like super I mean, that's basically the opening paragraph of the Call of Cthulhu. So like those kinds of monsters are really interesting because they're sort of testing the limit. They're challenging the whole Enlightenment idea of whether or not our pursuit of knowledge is necessarily a good thing, because what lies in those dark spots on the map doesn't necessarily mean that that's good for us. Or, you know, you've got something like Jurassic Park, which to a certain extent is a monster movie. And I mean, like the perfect monster, because like who doesn't like dinosaurs? And even in that one, right, you have this questioning of, I mean, that one seems to be a little bit more, if you look at like Ian Malcolm and Dr. Grant and all of these characters, a lot of them are maybe questioning whether or not our command of science is strong enough that we can start playing God at that point. And then, you know, this is a long and really interesting tradition, because you go all the way back to Mary Shelley's Frankenstein, which I think some people credit as the first science fiction story. I mean, and that one, subtitled Modern Prometheus, obviously a very, like, it is a literary work in addition to being a pretty decent yarn. And again, of course, it's Frankenstein's monster. And the, you know, the whole question about how we respond to these kinds of creations and such. But none of that's there. Even Godzilla, like Godzilla is so interesting because that sort of came out of the fact that there was still the United States having a say in what kind of cultural artifacts Japan could produce. And, you know, they're kind of dealing with the bombing of Hiroshima and Nagasaki.
Yeah. Mm-hmm.
And the fact, I mean, like it's not going to blow anyone's mind to know that, hey, Godzilla might have something to say about the bomb here.
Yeah, it comes out like
even something like that. Yeah, play the Inception. Like,
oh yeah, I guess it is the Inception.
Yeah. But like even then, like that's a movie that we kind of laugh at for how very very primitive to a certain extent. But there's really a heart to that. Like the monster has a meaning that transcends the era specific special effects and the low budget. And despite the fact that you've got the decapitated Statue of Liberty, like, actually, I'll put it to you this way. Even a movie that I don't think anybody has any respect to, I think it is more shocking to see the White House blown up, the symbol of American power blown up in Independence Day, than it is to see the Statue of Liberty decapitated in Cloverfield. Like, Cloverfield is a fun enough roller coaster, but it doesn't tell me anything. The monster is not particularly interesting, except insofar as it gives me another reason to have people running and screaming. We don't really learn a whole lot about the characters. The characters aren't that interesting. And in the end, like at that point, it just becomes a movie of bad things happening to not necessarily bad people, but people I'm somewhat indifferent about, which almost makes me feel worse. Because it's like these fictional people have needlessly suffered so that I can just have, a place to sit in an air-conditioned theater on a hot day. And I don't really feel like we learn anything. I feel like it's the marketing campaign was just another example of this sort of excess of directors or producers being branded. It had nothing to do with the story, and ultimately in the end it's a very shallow and uninteresting movie that, because it just happened to be riding a wave of alternate reality games and sort of this mystique around J.J. Abrams and Lost, I feel that it has been given far more credit than it really deserves.
I think when it first,
like I said, I really felt really strongly about this.
Yeah, it's all good. Like I don't really have anything to like protect or stand up for this movie. As I said, I really enjoyed it. However, it's one of those movies that I refuse to watch again because I just want to remember the good times. But I think one of the things that I find humorous about this movie is like the fat friend that's running around with the camcorder. I forget his name, but it's just like HUD. Yeah, it cracks me up, his whole storyline, because he's like, his whole thing was like, oh man, like, yeah, best friend, you're going to be going to Japan. And then it's like he invites his ex, like the guy's ex, over the house, and it's just like he comes out with the camera just like, hey buddy, what you do? Oh no. He's like, what do you do? Like he gets pissed off because he's recording him having an argument with his ex. And then Cloverfield monster shows up, to where the whole storyline is hot friend needs to go save other hot girl, that's his ex. And then HUD's walking around with that, and but then it's just like, well, HUD needs someone to hang out with, and so hey, here's the hot girl that HUD likes that doesn't like HUD. And it's just like, and then it's just like, it's one of those one things like, to get away from him, she got bit by an alien and exploded. So it's like, I don't know.
Quickly respond to Strider Owens here, because it's first of all, I always love it when I hear interesting point. But wait, Statue of Liberty? That was our planet. Yeah. You maniacs! You blew it up. No, that's a really good point. I didn't even think to make that connection, but
Spaceballs did it better.
Yeah, the only thing I can really say to that, though, is that the preceding hours of Planet of the Apes is just so much more of a worthwhile experience and builds up to that kind of surprising and inevitable ending. Cloverfield, the only real revelation they have at the ending is, if you leave at the credits, then the reveal is that while they were on the Ferris wheel, you see the smoke go down. So it's like, okay, yeah, I kind of already knew that every happy moment I have might just be a prelude to something more often. That's called life. Thanks. Or the ending where like apparently if you play it backwards, it's like it's still alive, which I have no idea if it has any other relation to the other movies which have Cloverfield in the title, because let's face it, they're just making it up as they go along. Yeah, I wanted to address that something was said in chat.
That's all good.
Hop
Okay.
hasn't said anything about it yet though.
I haven't seen it. I just know I avoided it because I have I have a thing where Strider can attest to this, where if I watch someone play a first-person game and I'm focused in on the game, then I can get motion sick depending on like the speed of how things are moving or like the motion effects that are put in place. And I'm not sure if my sister has a similar thing. Like, I can play the games if I'm in control, but if I'm watching someone else do it, then it makes me queasy. My sister told me she went to watch Cloverfield in theaters and she had to leave because, she got nauseous, her head felt awful. I was like, I'm better off just avoiding it because...
Yeah. There's a lot of shaky cam in it.
The worst thing too is that they actually market movies to say that it's because of the intensity. So it's like people were running out of the theater throwing up because Cloverfield's so intense. It's like, no, it's because of motion sickness. It was the same thing. There's a French film. It's hard to recommend because it's really, really tough, but it was called Irreversible. And it's probably got some of the most brutal 20 minutes of an opening. And people were talking about how people were running out of the theater throwing up for that. And it's like, well, yeah, because it's like that camera is completely detached from anything. Like even people who have fairly strong stomachs, it has nothing to do with the content, which is appalling. It's just the fact that the cinematic techniques are ones that simply don't care about people's, people's feeling. I always feel bad about, like, I think you should be able to make the movie that you want, but I do rather wish that people were a little bit more conscious about that, because I've never really seen a movie to use that aesthetic. Like Traffic uses handheld really well, and since Traffic, so many other shows, including like Battlestar Galactica, did the handheld thing to great effect. It's part of the cinematic grammar, really. But those ones, it's not like I'm running full speed with my camera kind of shaky. Whereas, some of these other ones, it's trying to capture like guy with a really light camcorder shake feel. And I just don't think alienating an audience that way. I have yet to see a story that has to be told that way. And I really just think it's people saying, not caring.
Hardcore Harry is all first person, and I heard that's really done well.
I have to check it out.
Yeah,
the one movie,
it's just a GoPro. The guy, they just put a GoPro on a parkour guy, and they just like run it. And like apparently, like there's guys that like I know that were talking like kind of how Hop is like with first person movies that they said they watched this, and it's just like it isn't like fast paced shakiness. There's still movement because they're doing parkour, but it didn't mess with them. They're like equilibrium and all that stuff.
So one, if we're on the topic of the sort of the first person movie, the one example of that being done well, I think, and I think it paid, one, because it's short, and two, because I think the payoff is worth it, although maybe a little tame or cliche by today's standards. But there's a music video called Smack My Bitch Up by Prodigy.
I like that music video a lot.
Yeah, like, isn't it great? Like, yeah, and like
it's got a great plot twist.
Yeah. I thought that was an incredibly well done music video. And it is really the only example I can give of the first person perspective being done well. Like I said, I love that the lady in the lake in like the 1960s or whenever it was shot really tried. And it feels like every other time when people have tried to do that, it has always just been failing to realize why that movie. I mean, most people have probably never heard of it, but it like if you see it, you kind of realize why that didn't catch on. Anyways,
so I guess we covered all that pretty well. So what's yours?
All right. So in hindsight, I could put a tie between my two least favorite, but should I just say them both, and you guys can decide which one's worse out of the two, or more overrated at least? You mentioned Star Wars earlier. I do not care for Star Wars in that universe, and Avatar, Blue People.
I thought we were still talking about the overrated ones, though.
Star Wars for me, everyone tells me that I should like it because it's a sci-fi, and I say it is not sci-fi. It is
space fantasy.
It is space fantasy, a subgenre of sci-fi, but I prefer hard sci-fi where you can tell me about the innards of your ship. I don't care. I don't care if you went to a planet and then alien taught you how to do backflips in a swamp. That doesn't tell me anything about technology or why I enjoy sci-fi.
You know what the best part about Star Wars? When it ended. Okay.
Because, like, I know there's, like, that, like, meme where they say you're either Star Trek or Star Wars, and it's you usually more one than the other. And
Firefly. No.
I am actually very Firefly. But but Star Trek, like, I started watching the Captain Kirk season slowly. I haven't finished it, but I enjoy just listening Captain Kirk do ridiculous things in the name of science rather than having the Force dictate how people should live their destiny.
Yeah, like the best way I can explain like to anyone like, hey, what's the difference between Star Wars and Star Trek is just like, okay, well, Star Wars is King Arthur, pretty much like that kind of setting. It's a medieval setting, except instead of dragons and swords, it's lightsabers and the racing man that shoots lightning. And then Star Trek is much more diplomatic treaties and peace talks.
It's a lot. It is a lot of weird talking.
Cool. Raisin Man, yeah, it's one of it's the children of the Californian raisin. He was just super pissed and started shooting lightning.
It's funny. I mean, I feel like I should stand up for my lady Avatar, but it feels like the consensus is growing around the overratedness of Star Wars. And it's actually, if the statement is overrated, it's hard to disagree because this is a fandom that, you know, is sending death threats to the creators because they didn't like the twist. I have not seen, you know, I've not seen the new ones. I'll give you I don't think you need to know why I didn't bother seeing The Force Awakens. It might be who was attached to that friggin' project. But having just, you know, ripped into Cloverfield and the fact that J.J. Abrams put his branding all over. Like, I already knew what the movie was going to be as soon as he was attached to it.
Yeah.
It's interesting that the grounds of the critique is the fact that it's not hard sci-fi. I kind of find that interesting because it to a certain extent, I almost think it comes to a similar theme that we've gotten with some of the other movies, which is, you know, I went in with one set of expectations and I came out with another. But I'll have to admit, like, if my role is to, I think I could do a better job of defending Avatar. But I will admit, like, even though I would never argue with you as to the hardness of the sci-fi, you know, even the first movie, which should be called Star Wars, not this retroactively renamed A New Hope, pretending that there was always 9 movies.
Yeah.
You know,
kissed.
Even
secret siblings.
even that first movie, like, I've not watched Star Wars in a while, but I do actually still get a little excited in the moment where he's going down the trench, and it's like, you know, give up, you know, just, you know, don't trust the technology, you know, learn the lesson that I told you. He turns off the targeting computer and he does it, and the music like swells up and the great symbol of imperial power goes up. Like, it's very hard. It's for the exact same reasons that you dislike it, I think, to a certain extent. Like, it's a big, you know, it's a big uplifting moment. It's pure fantasy. It's, you know, I've nothing to say against the hard sci-fi side of it, because it very clearly isn't that. But I kind of feel I need to at least allow some corner of my love of sci-fi to let sort of the fantastic stories kind of run wild. You know, alien planets for the sake of alien planets, and strange things happening, even though we don't necessarily have a harder reason for it. But but like it's a really, I was gonna say that's a really lily-livered defense on my part, because to a certain extent I've completely ceded the ground that you used as the basis of your critique, and I just kind of said, you know, but I liked it.
Yeah, and I'm like, you know, with all of these things we bring out, it's okay if you like things, whether we agree or not. And it's like, I think it's partially expectations, and it's also the fandom, like we mentioned, is like something else where like I'm like, yeah, I haven't really seen, like, I don't think I watched Star Wars until like 5-ish years ago. So before then, everyone would be like, you haven't seen Star Wars, you should do it for like bullet point list, and it never ends. And I'm like, if it was that big, I would have watched it by now, wouldn't I?
Oh my god, you haven't learned.
And then when I recently watched it, and I was like, you know, everyone's like, you tell me you like sci-fi, you tell me you like all of this stuff, and you haven't watched Star Wars, at least watch Star Wars. And then I watched it, and I was like, that wasn't what they sold me on.
Yeah, it's Space Willow.
That kind of feels like it's funny. It kind of feels like people are like, it feels like the same people would say to us like, oh, you like sci-fi, you'll love Warhammer 40K, and it's like, that is obviously a very successful brand. You know, it speaks for itself. If you want a sci-fi setting, you know, 40K, you know, is very easy to understand. But I would completely understand how someone who maybe likes The Martian, you know, might be a little annoyed that somebody's running up and saying, like, oh, hey, you like The Martian? Well, let me tell you about the Adeptus Astartes. Like, they're just two totally different things.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah, so I can see, I can completely see the reasons why I wouldn't do it for you. But now I do have a question about your Avatar inclusion, because like I was this close to actually putting Avatar, partly because I thought one of you monsters would put Avatar as your like bad movie. I was debating on putting that on my good list. Did you see Avatar in theaters?
I did not watch it in theaters.
Okay.
Nope.
So I do not, I understand that it was very good as one of the first like very well thought out 3D movies, which I will give it to. The technology when 3D first came out was so abused that you'd watch something and be like, that was a waste of time and money. Why'd you have that jump in my face? Like, I understand that they did very well with that, the technology, the soundscape, the mocap, but plot alone, I was watching it at Disney World after I had visited Disney's like whatever, Pandora, like Disney's version of Pandora. Very beautiful, very cool, very fun rides available there. So people were like, now you should at least watch the movie so you understand like what you did. And I watched the movie and I was like, oh, it's Pocahontas.
Yeah.
Yeah. And this is fun because this is the main criticism I always hear of it. So yeah, the big thing is I did watch it in theater. I've actually only ever seen it once. I watched it and I was convinced that like nobody would ever be able to make a 2D movie again. Like I was just blown into the back of the theater. I could not believe what I was seeing. And I mean, this movie is like over 10 years old now, I think.
And 2's still coming out.
Yeah. And 3 if they, you know, if it
It'll
makes
be after
money.
James Cameron is a robot, but they're coming out, dang it.
But yeah, the only answer I really have to the Pocahontas thing is that I think like if we think about 10 years ago, you know, it's not like environmentalism is as old as Silent Spring by Rachel Carson, which unless all of you have aged spectacularly well, I believe predates any of our births by several decades. You know, but it is very clear that this is something that we have taken up with a much greater sense of urgency over the past decade. And I think what also really interested me is that this is a movie that's been taken up by a number of sort of indigenous rights groups, and they do actually use it as I want to call it a propaganda piece, but like in a non-pejorative sense, like to try and make the, you know, make the case and create some sort of empathy. And so the only argument that I'll make about the Pocahontas thing, because I think I often hear a lot of complaints about the simplicity of the story. And I sometimes think that James Cameron, having demonstrated his incredible skill as a filmmaker, is also really, really attentive to audiences. And there is sort of a spectrum in terms of the importance of the quote unquote message or the idea that you're trying to communicate and the simplicity of the story. So, you know, I'm reasonably educated. I definitely like it when filmmakers, you know, tickle my brain with the little, hey, you were clever enough to pick this out moments. But I think to a certain extent, the fact that I actually think that the simplicity of Avatar's story is a feature rather than a bug. And that it's definitely going to be a really hard sell to say, you know, now we're concerned about the environment because of Avatar. But I mean, there's a lot of people who watch that movie. That movie does not make that much money if people aren't coming back and seeing it. And I was utterly shocked when I found out about various sort of activist groups across the world actually using it as a tool in their fight for sort of indigenous land claims and such, as a tool for empathy. And once I heard that, I really thought, yeah, actually, the simplicity of that story is something that works for it. But I don't think I'm going to convince either of you. This is the thing. Like,
nope.
It's like comedy, right? Like if you sit down with a comedy and you laugh, it did. You know, yeah, I've also heard the Dances Wolf. The thing, like the point is the same one way or the other, right? The simplicity of the story allows the themes to come through more clearly. But and again, I'm sorry for taking so much time on the talking, but what was I going to, I'll stop at that. Yeah, sorry. Like the comedy point I was going to make. If you go in, it doesn't matter how stupid or crude the comedy is. If you laughed, it worked, and if you didn't laugh, it didn't work. And I kind of hate that about comedy, because sometimes the stuff I laugh at is stuff that I sort of know deep down I shouldn't laugh at, but I can't turn around and say that it wasn't funny because I've revealed that it was funny by laughing at it. And I feel largely the same about movies, which is I'm never going to logic you guys into watching it again. Although I would say an Avatar, give it another shot. Although maybe I won't like Avatar as much if I see it on the small screen.
Yeah, I watched it in a hotel room, so it does not do any of the visuals like service. But I do know, like, I had family members that were like, "Oh, I'm gonna rewatch Avatar, but I'm gonna go to the IMAX so I can watch it in like 4D and all that stuff."
That would have been amazing to see in IMAX.
Yeah, IMAX makes me sick too. So I think I watched one of the Harry Potters in IMAX, and something about the peripherals, it does not do well for me. But no, like, it's just, I think I oversimplify movies. Maybe that's it, where I don't consider all the factors and I just go and I'm like, I've seen this already. And that's just like, and then from there I kind of start to lose interest and like I just fade away eventually.
Sorry, I'm laughing at what Strider wrote.
I think I fell asleep in my watchings of the 2 first Star Wars. I've also fallen asleep in Lord of the Rings. I've also fallen asleep in Pirates of the Caribbean.
Oh, actually, here's an interesting question for you. Which would you rate as having had this discussion and keeping in mind that I will send you a photograph of my big misty crying eyes depending on how you answer.
Yes.
Which of the two is the more overrated?
I think based on fandom more than anything, I would put Star Wars, because like I can't go anywhere on the internet without Star Wars. I can't go like to amusement parks without Star Wars. I can't go to the movies without someone being like, hey, remember there's a Star Wars movie out. There's been a Star Wars movie out every 6 months for the past so many years. It feels that fast.
Doesn't Ray have shark teeth now? I thought I saw that online.
I haven't.
I don't know.
I do kind of want to see the French adaptation, Rouge One, but no. So I was making some Star Wars jokes about like how Electronic Arts should give me the Star Wars IP because I had a bunch of good ideas. So there was like Dagobah Activist, where you are like a protester on Coruscant against the Imperial project. Like you want to conserve the swamp planet Dagobah, where Yoda lives, because conservation is good and we need to preserve the environment and such, and you have to deal with the the suspicions of being an agent for the rebels, you know, the same way that some like activist groups wind up being fronts for terrorist organizations. And there's some positive probability that you are in fact a front for the rebels, because of course Yoda is hiding on Dagobah. It's completely a rebel base. But I came up with one where it's like you play, I was going through it as like you play a civil servant and you are responsible for project managing the Death Star and all of the complications and bureaucracy involved. And somebody said, that's kind of the plot. That's like who the bad guy in Rogue One is. And I'm like, I really want to see Rogue One now. I want to see the civil servant.
I will admit, Rogue One, out of all the Star Wars movies, okay, so I really like Rogue One. I don't think it's the best, but I'm like, when I look at Rogue One, why do I like it so much? There's no Skywalkers. Take the Skywalkers out of the Star Wars universe and it immediately gets better.
Are you trying to suggest that the guy who within, you know, their first few minutes of learning him says, but I have to go to Tashi Station to pick up some power converters, is not the most compelling hero that you've seen? And
yeah, no, like not just him, his whole lineage.
All of it.
I don't like sand. It's coarse.
Yeah.
Not like you. You're smooth.
So
just like these lines.
But yeah, it's definitely one of those things where like I really enjoyed Rogue One, and like, but the other thing that I also really enjoyed, which is actually the last Star Wars movie I did watch, was whatever the middle one was of the
Strikes Back.
No, the new stuff.
Oh, The Last Jedi.
Yeah.
Or yeah.
Yes, it's The Last Jedi. Even though I thought the movie was really garbage, I did think there was a lot of stuff in there that if they allowed them to explore some of the concepts of that movie, it would have been way more interesting. Like, of the whole thing, the whole like story that they're saying where like and as soon as I say this, my mind blanks out because I haven't seen the movies. But it was like, I remember I was sitting there, I'm like, there's some cool things in there. And my favorite shot of all Star Wars is in that movie where it's literally an anime where the person turns around, the ship around, jumps to light speed and crashes into one of the giant other ships. And it's like, it's in space, so everything is silent. It goes to like you hear like this crunching. I'm like, this is an anime right here, this whole scene, because like you see like this giant gash down the main ship, and it's like that was really cool. Too bad the rest of the movie existed.
I don't know if we've resolved the question of the two fandoms, but I will say that Spock is my favorite midichlorian. I really haven't watched a lot of Star Trek.
Yeah, so my bad one, because I think we're done talking about Star Wars and Avatar. I guess the last thing I will say on Star Wars is if you like that, you're like pro incest. Anyway,
it only happens in the first movie, right?
Yeah, and what does that set the tone for? Wow, don't talk about it because we did that. So, Jedi rednecks. Oh, I just lost my notes. So actually, the movie that is my number one worst movie, the book is actually the inspiration for pretty much all science fiction that came out, and the movie is atrocious. It's Dune.
The David Lynch movie you're talking about, right? Not the TV miniseries?
Yes, the David Lynch movie. Yeah, which is actually making me really excited because my number one movie, which I'm just going to say right now, looking at time, we're just going to say our top number ones.
Oh, really? That's a shame.
I know. I just looked at the time and I'm like, unless we can go really quick.
Yeah, if you want to allude to it and we don't like linger on it, we can still do that. But anyway.
Well, you're going to say Blade Runner 2049 if you're saying that the new Dune movie.
Close. But yeah, it's the new Dune movie is being directed by Villeneuve. I think that's his name.
Canadian. Yeah,
and I don't know. I don't want to go in too far of it because he directed one of the movies that is my number one, but I'm really excited for that. But however, I really love this book and I thought it was amazing. And then I watched the movie, and honestly, Dune could be a 3-part series, like with all the content that's in that one book. And and there's just a lot of stuff where and honestly, this is probably like, besides it just looking terrible and just like not being all that exciting to look at, and it's just like the ending is like, really, that you did that? So it's definitely one of those things where I'm like I don't know if you guys have watched Dune or read the book, or either or.
I've seen the film. I think I read the first book. I have more, but
yeah. It's honestly, it's one of those things where it's like, it's worth reading the book, ignore this film, and because I think part of it was there was limitations on just technology, so they couldn't really do anything. But also, it's normally I would be like, okay, it's like shot for like some of the big scenes in the movie, except it still doesn't like, it doesn't hold. And I'm like, I just wasted a lot of time watching this, and this was really cool in my headspace. However, it will be really interesting to see. I don't know if it's still coming out due to COVID, but it was supposed to come out in December, and yeah, it's just, I don't know. It's really like how last week, or technically the Saturday, when I talked about I the Tiger just hurting my soul because I'm like, Rocky. And it's like, this one's like, Dune, why'd you do this? So yeah, I can't, like, I just remember being really disappointed in watching it. So
Another expectations failing you example.
yes.
I won't defend it, but there's an interesting tidbit I found. Apparently, the theatrical version of that movie had like a little booklet, like if you go to the theater or the opera, explaining all of the houses and all the details. And I'm like, you've probably messed up making your movie if there's required reading.
Yeah.
Before.
Well,
Oh, no.
like the really neat thing is that I'm gonna mess up his name, but it's like Jabberwoski's Dune.
Alejandro Jodorowsky, I think, or
yeah, it's pretty much this guy. Like, I watched, there's a documentary on his take on Dune that never got made.
Yeah,
and it sounded really cool. It's, I think it's called Jabberwoski's Dune, however, whatever his name is, but it's like, that's what it's called. It's a documentary. I watched it, and it sounded like the whole concept of the idea that he had for the film is really cool, and he actually put it in a bunch of different projects. But it honestly was, the producers didn't want his version of it and didn't want to take the risk, and they were like, if you can raise this much money, we will cover you with the rest and you can make the movie. And like, the actors and talent that he had sign up for this was like amazing. And it's like, and instead we got this, which is probably another disappointment.
I bet David Lynch's pitch sounded pretty good at the time too, but yeah, it's easy to talk about the movie you're going to make. It's another thing to make it.
Yeah, especially like, as I said, Dune, like, if anyone has read that book, it could easily be made into 2 parts, which is, it's really going to make, I'm really interested to see Villeneuve's take on it. So yeah, that's all I'm going to say. I'm not going to dwell on it too much. So yeah, so I guess if we can keep it quick, we can do both. If we're gonna go long on both, like, we can keep it to the top one.
Well, this is the tricky one. Definitely the one I have the most to say about would be the top one, and it's the one I would definitely want to get out. But I can learn brevity if we think we can knock out both.
How about this? How about you say your runner up and then go into your number one, so that way we can still know what it is.
Right. Okay.
Okay.
Yeah. So my runner up, which I think tells you how big number one was for me, is actually 2001: A Space Odyssey, which feels like one of these movies that you kind of have to put on all-time best science fiction. But I had 8 movies that were there for the runner-up, and not even just a question in terms of cinematic influence in that. I just recently finished Outer Wilds. Sorry, I know you wanted me to go straight into the other one, but I'll give the capsule. It occurred to me that when I played the game Outer Wilds, how commonplace I take a lot of science fiction tropes and how Outer Wilds made me feel wonder in a way that very few games and movies have. And that is ultimately, I think, the reason why a lot of people get drawn to science fiction. And I mean,
this question, was it Outer Worlds?
Outer Wilds.
Wilds? Okay, there's two that are really...
The Outer Worlds is the Obsidian game. Outer Wilds is the indie game. And I
you were talking about science fiction, so I was just making sure. both
are science fiction. Yeah.
Okay, I never played the other one, so I wasn't sure.
It's really good, and I highly recommend you play it. And when I was reflecting on it, I wanted to say, you know, other than 2001: A Space Odyssey, what movie am I gonna pick as a representation of this sort of feeling?
Star Wars.
And I can actually talk about the influence of Star Wars, but again, I know we need to wrap it up, so I'll save that for like the after hours or something. But really, 2001 can't be beat. The Stargate sequence is incredible. I mean, I think Hal is probably the reason why all of our voice assistants are like have female voices, because that scar runs deep and we are terrified by calm Canadian, you know, robot voices. It's one where I feel like a lot of people find it boring, or some people feel that it's, you know, it's famous for being famous. And yet I can think of very few films that have actually captured the sense of wonder and gravity, and more importantly are depicting a future which may possibly be aspirational in some aspects. It's a movie that needs to be experienced. It's one that you can't really do an essay about. It's very fragile, and whenever you try and capture the essence of it, it sort of breaks almost. It's a movie that I actually think probably has best captured what it is to be a science fiction fan, and that's my number 2. Oh yeah, you wanted me to go to number 1 straight after?
Yeah, let's go right into number 1.
The Terminator. This movie is incredible. This movie is a lot smarter than you think it is too.
I love Terminator. So
yeah, so yeah, what's great about it is that it's hard not to have a positive opinion about Terminator. Here's something I bet you guys didn't notice about Terminator, which I found like 2 or 3 times ago after I watched it. Did you realize that technology betrays its owners multiple times before the Terminator actually meets Sarah Connor? So like Sarah Connor cannot get a phone call through to anyone. Her roommate is listening to her headphones while the Terminator is in their apartment. She is completely unaware of the danger. When Sarah Connor finally calls the police, finally gets through to someone, it's to her answering machine right when the Terminator shows up to hear that she's at Tech Noir. The more you look at that, the more you realize that all of the betrayal of technology is like, it's foreshadowed completely throughout the movie. And there are so many little details inside of that. It's such a great, I mean, again, it's made in the shadow of the atomic bomb. You know, it is an incredibly smart and important message that is just tucked in a really awesome action thriller. And I love everything about it. It's like watching that movie today, I still am incredibly impressed at just how well made it is as a film, and how many facets I'm still discovering about it as I watch it. And yet it's one of these ones where I feel like I need to make the case for 2001: A Space Odyssey as to why it is worth getting through the stuff people would think would be boring. I don't think anybody here would say no to a Terminator movie night if they were asked. Like, it's just fun to watch.
It depends which one.
First one, yes.
There are only two Terminator movies. Yeah. The first, I mean, the second one is basically the template for every action movie that's ever come afterwards. I still think it's an okay science fiction movie, but the first one has like everything that is great about science fiction. Big ideas, you know, taking advantage of the strange world or the strange idea to get important stuff underneath, to tell you a message you need to hear but aren't ready to listen to. And it again, I said this, or this is the James Cameron appreciation hour, but you know, it's more evidence that I think one of the great, in addition to the fact he's a very gifted filmmaker, I think James Cameron has a very good talent for being able to find out what an audience wants. I think any other movie that would sit down and lecture you about the bomb or about an unhealthy relationship with technology would fall flat. But when it's the Terminator, it is like it's just unbelievable. I also got a chance to see it on the big screen, and that opening crawl. Like, first of all, I love the opening text. Like, it's, the battle for the future will be fought tonight. I'm like, all right, you got my attention. But that
go on.
that really low rumbling synth as like the titles are going by at the start. Like I was incredibly happy when I got to see that on. It was like an art house theater. They were showing Terminator to pay the rent, but like, oh man, just being able to see that, like, up on the big screen, see those huge letters, I was in heaven. Yeah, so that's my number.
I have a question. Do you ever listen to the band Austrian Death Machine?
No.
Okay, so it's these guys that do an impersonation of Terminator Arnold.
Okay.
And I forget, it's like a guy from another like metal band, and so like the whole thing is them playing metal music and doing covers of all Arnold's movies, and like they come in with Arnold. He says like, "I'm the Governator. Watch my movies. What is wrong with you?" and then there's like someone came in and said like he predicted all the lines for like Mr. Freeze, and he's like, "He's an idiot. What? Oh, Freeze!" it's. And I think both albums. I don't know if there's 2 or 3 albums, but it's worth it. Just going to YouTube. I think they're like 30 minutes long each, but it's like pretty much all it is. Where like people like call them up, and like I think in the second like album they're like, "Oh, who are you, you little girly man, making fun of my voice? Come down and fight me!" Bah! It's just, I don't know. I really like Terminator, but it's just like every time that's what I think of. It's like that album.
A funny fact about the Arnold casting. He was supposed to be the hero originally, and they pitched the movie with Lance Henriksen, with like Bishop from Aliens. He was supposed to be the Terminator, and like apparently, so the story I've heard is that apparently he took like the foil out of his cigarette pack and like put it over his teeth, and like he's all dressed in leather and like kicks in the door to the office where they're pitching this and just like sits and stares at the secretary until like Cameron eventually comes in. Is like, "So this is the bad guy." And like the whole idea is that it's an infiltration unit, right? So it's like trying to get in. It's not really, it's a lot more like Robert Patrick in the second movie, the T-1000. But as soon as Schwarzenegger's attached as the hero, the menace of the Terminator is gone, because he looks like he can break Lance Henriksen in half. And so there's sort of the switcheroo. Schwarzenegger became the Terminator, which is sort of redone as this giant death machine. And I'm not sure how Michael Biehn got attached to it, but it's really interesting to hear what the original intention behind the Terminator was. Sorry, I really like that movie.
Yeah, no, it's a good movie.
I feel a little bad that I keep talking over the times where Hoppocalypse might be saying something.
No, I was just gonna say, like, I grew up with my family loving that movie as well, and that my biggest memory of the Terminator is, I think we went to Florida a few times growing up, and while I don't remember much of like Disney World and all that, I do remember us going to Universal, and the 2 rides I remember, one was a standing ride of is it Twister or Tornado? Either way.
I think Twister was the movie.
Twister was the movie. Yeah, I just remember being scared because they had a CGI cow get sucked into the storm, and I cried, and my mom was like, "It's just a ride." And then my other memory was like a supposed 4D experience of the Terminator, and like it had like 3D pop outs, and they sprayed water on us when like things were happening, and I can't think of anything that I don't like about the Terminator. It's a good time.
Yeah. I like telling people I'm pro Skynet, and then they just have to sit there and think for a second, and then like a couple minutes later, they're like, "What do you mean?" So, yeah, Terminator's great. It's funny though, because like my brain thought very much of a certain sense of science fiction movies, and now that you're mentioning that, I'm like, man, I also really like RoboCop and the remake of Dredd.
Well, I was going to be sarcastic and say, my favorite science fiction story is House. It's like, isn't that a medical show? It's like, are you saying medicine isn't science?
No, that's all a bunch of hooey, and you know it.
But yeah, you guys were really generous to let me get my two out. So unless we want to continue talking about how awesome Terminator was, I am actually really curious. I'd love to hear both of yours if you're willing to put the time in. But I know I'm.
You're fine. No, my interpretation of sci-fi was a little bit looser. I know I did a general search to help me get into the frame of mind of like what's considered in sci-fi, and there are so many good movies that came up, but I would classify them more in my heart as a good like horror film. Like technically Alien and The Thing and all that came up, and I was like, I love these, but another topic, another day.
Event Horizon.
Yeah. Although I will say in defense, I think if you allow the monster movie to be science fiction, and it's hard to say that Frankenstein isn't. I think Alien definitely, especially too, because like there wasn't really a space trucker movie before Alien was made, and now that's like something we take for granted in science fiction now. So I think you could get by with it, but it's your interpretation. So I shouldn't be telling you how to think.
Yeah, I just know like it will probably be very likely that another day we'll have a topic on horror movies, and then I don't want to like have the same answers across every genre of movie, just repeating my favorite movies because technically they apply to the genre.
It'd be a great meme.
It would be
Terminator is like the top choice for everything, including favorite pie.
We could say best romance too. Like
yeah.
at least they didn't kiss a sibling.
No, it's one of the. It is one of the few films where you can say that the sex scene is essential to the plot. Also, actually, here's the thing. How's this for like a really interesting twist that this doesn't get enough credit for? The main hero in an action movie is a virgin. Like that's a big reveal about Kyle Reese.
Not
like
the
what
end.
What other movie can you think of where you have the main character admit to the fact that he's a virgin? Like that's pretty cool.
Pokemon.
Well, he's 10
Really?
forever.
Ash the Immortal.
Anyways, I'm sorry. I said I wasn't going to take over again, but sorry.
No, you're fine. But yeah, so since I kind of did more of a general interpretation for myself, my runner-up I put was Akira, the anime film.
Ooh, that's a good one.
It's a good movie. It's been a little bit since I've watched it. I think we own it on Blu-ray, and like I reread the plot and I was like, I forgot how deep this was. It's just so pretty, and the music's so good, and the action's so good, but this plot hurts my brain right now. I'm gonna deal with this later.
It almost was this year. Have you heard about that?
I know people did things with like they have the imagery in it to say like cancel the Tokyo Olympics, which is like coincides with this year and all that stuff. So I thought that was very interesting. But yeah. Yes, I really like Akira. And then my number one movie, kind of, in a sense, is kind of the opposite of her in a way, where Eternal Sunshine of the Spotless Mind.
Oh.
Mm-hmm.
Where you
I have
do...
a question for you after this.
Okay. The sci-fi in it is pretty light. Like, it's not the main focus, but it is the driving point to allow the plot to even happen, because... have you seen it, DPayne?
I haven't, but I know what it's about.
Okay.
You're gonna have to mute my question, DPayne.
That's all good. But, like, I don't watch movies or anything anymore, but like I've already know kind of a lot of the stuff about it. So
okay, I think it's interesting in a way that like it takes a step into science fiction where everyone says they want something, and then they let the person have the procedure, and then it just hurts the whole time. Emotionally wrecks me. When I want to cry, I rewatch that movie. So like it is almost the opposite of her, where her like I was built up at where I liked Eternal Sunshine of the Spotless Mind, where they take the sci-fi and add the emotional element, and then like go through it to see how the technology connection can still like hurt you at a human level. But then her, I felt let down by the end of it, whereas Eternal Sunshine, I was like, I need to know what's happening, and it hurts more and more as I find out more along what's happening. And it's satisfying for me in that sense.
So, first question for you. Is it a happy ending?
She said she cried.
I cry a lot in emotional movies. I don't know that I would necessarily give it a happy ending because it's kind of DPayne, you don't care if I like.
Go ahead.
I feel like it creates an infinite loop.
Yeah, there's actually a hint in the movie that it's an infinite loop too. So do you remember the last shot that well?
No.
I remember them. They meet in the same place, right? Or
that's right, and they go running down the beach.
Yeah.
And as the movie fades to credits, if you watch carefully, and I was really surprised more people didn't pick this up, but you actually see it cut back. So they run down the beach and then it cuts back, and they run down the beach and it cuts back. They run down the beach and it cuts back. So at no point does the movie explicitly tell you that they've created an infinite loop. And yet, why would you put the replay of that run if you weren't implicitly saying that ultimately these are people who will never learn from their mistakes? These are the type of people who would erase their mind. And so, you know, the situation's going to happen again. I like it. Oh, sorry?
I want to rewatch it again.
Yeah, totally do it. Let me know what you think, because I mean, sometimes I worry when I talk about this stuff, like, you know, the Terminator, like the, you know, technology betraying its owners. Like, it's kind of like when you were in English class and the teacher's like, and what was the meaning of this poem? And there's like, you know, it's this tortured interpretation that just ruins it for you.
Mm-hmm.
And yet I also know that an early draft of that one actually took place in the future with an old Jim Carrey and an old, well, I guess whoever the character was. You know, an old Clementine, and the Kirsten Dunst secretary is there, and like it was really explicit about the fact that it kept going.
Okay.
And I think, no, again, like just because it was in an earlier script doesn't mean that was, you know, we watched a movie on the screen. We didn't read an early draft,
Mm-hmm.
right? But I really think they did an interesting thing with that final shot by explicitly having repetition inside of it, because I think, you know, you can make what you want of the ending. You can decide whether or not you're the sort of person who would erase memories. But I think the movie itself is pretty clear that what happened was not a good thing, and that ultimately they've essentially condemned themselves to an infinite loop.
Mm-hmm.
Sorry, I have many opinions.
No, it's fine. And I think,
how dare you?
Yeah, like, I don't know. I guess for me, like, I guess technically Eternal Sunshine isn't really a hard sci-fi because they don't tell you, like, that was my argument against, like, Star Wars. They don't really talk about the technology they use. They kind of, like, show a weird contraption, but they don't talk, or do they talk through it? No, they get drunk.
Yeah, I mean, it's on par with, you know, technically the procedure is brain damage, but on the par with a night of heavy drinking, nothing you'll miss.
Yeah, but I think it speaks louder to me to have those, like, force you as a person to realize that advancements in technology aren't always what you hope and want them to be. Because I know I've made friends with or the kind of jokes with friends, like, oh, I'm so embarrassed, I wish I could just erase that. And then this movie is like, are you sure?
Shame, as much as I hate to admit it, is actually a very useful emotion. Like, you really don't do your worst stuff again. Because have you played the game Soma?
I've started it. I have not finished it.
It goes interesting places. I think you will like it.
Okay.
I recommend pushing through to the end. And if you didn't like it, then please send me in all capital letters email explaining that I wasted your time. But I think, having gotten to know your tastes in science fiction over the course of this podcast, I think it is something that is worth your time.
Okay.
Sorry, DPayne.
That's all good. Yeah, I got nothing to say about the movie. I haven't seen it, so.
Yeah, it's fine.
So, I was more thinking of how bad it would be for me to start off with the thing I said about Star Wars before going into Dune as the cold open to the podcast. I think I'm gonna do it, but so yeah. I don't know. Was there anything else? I don't want to cut you guys short. If there's anything else you wanted to mention about it.
No.
If you want a cold open, Cloverfield is bad, and you should feel bad for watching it.
I don't feel bad about a lot of things. I will. Okay, if we're gonna go back for old stuff, I will
no. Sorry, I just wanted to give you your opener.
I do think my favorite part about Avatar, the blue one, is the memes I just say where I legitimately forget that The Last Airbender is a thing. And I go into Hop's Discord and make Avatar jokes about the wrong movie.
No, we don't talk about the Last Airbender movie. That doesn't exist.
Oh yeah. Yeah, that's true. But so yeah. Okay. Well then my two top movies, they're both newer movies. My runner up is it's I don't really have a way to go into it, but it's Ex Machina. It's I realized like the science fiction movies that I like a lot are, I guess in a sense, the ones that are, I don't have any other way to explain it but say like smart science fiction where like, not to like I, as I'm gonna say, I really like Terminator, I really like RoboCop, I like them, but like when you look at them in totality without like kind of bringing up the things that SystemChalk brought up, they are action movies, and it's just like there aren't stuff that's in there that you can pull out and just say this is important, all this stuff. But it's like it's an action movie. Like as we were saying, Star Wars is a science fiction fantasy movie. Like other series that I enjoy, well, that made it sound like I like Star Wars. I don't. But like Firefly,
good movies.
Firefly, I'm not taking back what I said. Firefly is a space western. I really like that. But like Ex Machina, it's a different, I guess, style. Like there is action in it, but it's a very smart movie where you have to just like you have to think your way through it, because if people don't know what it is, the whole movie is about, if I'm remembering the test, the Turing test.
Turing test. Alan
Turing test.
Oh yeah, got a CS page here.
Hmm?
I didn't need to correct that. Hopscotch, if she could tell me more about Turing than I'll ever know.
Yeah, which I'm probably gonna butcher what it is, but it simply is like, does, oh, now my brain blanked out, but it like, does the technology advance to the point where it can like be human? Is that like kind of great, like a good summary of what that is?
I didn't read Do a Android's Dream of Electric Sheep. Strider did, but that one's, I think, the best literature that kind of talks about it, if I remember right, because that's the book that serves as like the Blade Runner inspiration and everything. So I think that all falls into this.
Yeah, and so that's what Ex Machina all is, like, except like you see an android there without her hiding anything, because the creators are like, well, if you didn't know she wasn't human, like how's the best way to prove this test, like that she's the best like robot human when she can't even disguise herself? And so there's this, and then like it gets to the point where like the main character thinks like, am I a robot? And just like it's this huge psychological battle between two really smart people, and just the way it goes, it's really worth like watching if you guys haven't. It's one of my favorites because it obviously made it up to number 2. My number 1 is Arrival.
Okay.
Arrival, as we said, Villeneuve. I really hope I'm saying his name right. And I'm really hoping I'm saying the right director. It's when you guys think of alien movies, generally 99% of the time is aliens are here, get your gun, and we got to go protect it. Like Independence Day, which we mentioned earlier. There's, as my brain blanks out of other like alien invasion movies, it's
War of the Worlds.
Yeah, War of the Worlds,
the quintessential alien invasion plot.
Yeah, it's like run and hide, or protect yourself. And Arrival, I just think, is really interesting because they come in here. They come to. Have you guys seen Arrival?
You know, I'm ashamed to admit I haven't, but the premise is really interesting. This is the one where they need to decipher the alien language.
Yes,
right?
They need to decipher the alien language. I'm not going to spoil the ending, but it's one of those movies where, as like things like start to progress and things start to happen as, shoot, I forgot the main actress's name. But anyway, her and Hawkeye like start.
Hawkeye.
Jeremy Renner.
Yeah, Jeremy Renner.
Amy Adams.
Amy Adams, yeah. As they start interpreting this language, it's just really cool because you stay in the one location where I think it's in like Wisconsin or something. It's like the middle of nowhere of America, and then you find out that there's 13 other ships all around the world, and it's kind of becomes this race to find out who can like talk to the aliens first. And there's like a really interesting point where like Amy Adams, like she's the best at what she can do, and she's like interpreting, and it shows like what she can do with it, like even at the beginning without like explaining her like accolades of how good she is at interpreting language and like discovering unknown languages, where she just asks a simple question to the person they did originally call, and just like ask him what like this word means in war. Like it's like, or like this one word, and like they come back and it's like, how'd you know he wouldn't be able to like interpret it? And it's just like, it's a real simple mistake if you don't see the minute things. And it kind of foreshadows a little bit because China, they have one and they interpret a word as war, and they're like, it gets to this whole point where now the whole world is like, we're gonna blow these suckers up, like even though they show they can't do anything against them. And she kind of like puts a pause on the whole thing because she does the same thing. But it's definitely one of those movies that it just takes its time, and it's definitely like step by step by step. And like there's just certain things that happen in the movie. Once again, I'm talking like just super vague, so that way people can go and check this movie out, because it's definitely worth checking out. It's done really well. I guess now I have to ask, have you guys watched Ex Machina?
No.
Oh, go watch that one too.
Yeah.
It's good.
Arrival is one that I've had recommended me to a lot. I have a coworker that knows that, like, he kind of has an idea of my taste in sci-fi, and he said that I would really like Arrival. I have an ongoing list of things that I need to watch.
Yeah, no, it's all, like, I understand that list that builds, but yeah, it's when I thought down and really thought about what are my favorite science fiction movies, it's those ones that you're constantly thinking through. And that's kind of what these two movies are. Like it brings in, like, Ex Machina is very much a philosophy movie, and like you think through, like, because there's battling philosophies and just like trust being broken, and just like, well, what does this mean for this robot if she passes? Like, what does this mean for anybody here? And it's like, that's the question you keep bringing up the whole time in this movie. And with Arrival, it's very much like there's this person, and like she is the most intelligent person and the person that is best gifted to this one thing of interpreting language, and she's the best in the world. But then, like, because of stress and just like as things progress through the movie, it's like, is she having a mental breakdown? Can she be trusted? Can, like, if she interprets one word wrong, this could be the end of the human race. And it's both movies, just they take their time and they just build like that tension and everything. They're just, it doesn't like kind of, I guess, fall back on, like, it's just like the whole movie is just really smart from start to beginning. And that's kind of what I was saying. They're both very smart science fiction movies where, like, you just had to, it's one of those things, you just, as I said earlier, you just got to constantly be thinking through the whole movie and kind of just remembering what certain people said or how certain people reacted. And I don't know, I like those movies. So.
The opposite of Interstellar, where you figured it out and had to sit through the rest of it.
Yeah. Yeah.
I could add too. Oh, also, hi, Value Cheese. I didn't see you there. Now you know why I was not responsive in chat a little while ago. But I think one thing that interests me too is just something Hoppocalypse said earlier, and I mean, hopefully I at least got a little bit across when I was talking about 2001, or probably more so for Terminator, but the idea that technological progress is not necessarily always good. I think there's a really interesting echo of that in how you described Arrival, because you have this idea of, a foreign power, leading the race to translate a word. So, but you've got this fine line, right? You could sort of imagine this with the race for AI, which is, everybody wants to be at the bleeding edge, but with certain technologies, that the wrong step can have pretty catastrophic consequences. And so it's really interesting. You don't normally think linguistics, or whatever the discipline that leads one to translate alien language, does that. And yet it's so interesting to see that in that particular case, you have a very similar tension to one that's a very real concern today.
Mm-hmm. Yeah. Now I just want to watch both those movies. So it's just, they're like, I know Hop said like people suggested those movies to her, and it's all that stuff, but it's like, I wouldn't watch them back to back. I'll say that.
Would your brain be fried?
Probably.
I have an exceptionally large brain, so.
Okay.
No Hitchhiker's Guide fans?
Which one? Oh, Hitchhiker's Guide. Oh,
yeah,
man,
it's what Marvin says.
Yeah, I read it a long time ago, but I haven't watched the movie interpretations.
I watched the movie and didn't realize it was a book till later.
There is one moment in the movie that I liked, but that was a crashing disappointment. I just didn't want to crap on it because I'm nice. I'll pretend the movie didn't happen and the book was.
Yeah, I read the entire series, but I read it so fast that they all blend together, so I can't tell where like one of the books starts and one of them ends. Because I got the at one point. Yeah, so I was sitting there on vacation, sitting in the sun with something like probably as tall as my forearm, like flipping through a book.
I'm actually ashamed to admit I've not yet read Mostly Harmless. I should do that.
I'll just get the audiobooks and I'll listen to them eventually.
Well, it was a radio play originally, I think.
Oh, I believe so, yeah.
My brother was telling me about it. I think it's the diner at the end of the world.
And I love that scene.
It's just, he was telling me about the scene where they keep going back there and the universe resets and they leave Marvin there and he's like, it was really boring. Never do this again. Something on the lines of that. Just like he sat there like for all of time just waiting for them to come back and pick him up.
Oh, I thought you were going to talk about the scene where they made the cow sentient to remove the guilt for eating meat, but instead people felt worse the main character feels worse because the cow's talking to him.
Oh yeah.
But their intention was like, well, if the cow offers it, you don't feel guilty. And the guy's like, no. Don't talk to me. It's like, but you could have a ribeye.
All right, hold on. Is this on Audible now?
Valiant Cheese is dropping the bombs in chat. That's kind of funny.
But I do believe, what is it? I'm blanking on another tidbit from Hitchhikers.
There's so
many. I think Towel Day is like the self-proclaimed Towel Day is like a week after my birthday.
Ah. Well, happy pre or post birthday. I guess I'll just watch your channel and see if you're carrying a towel.
I think it's if I remember right, it's a time in May. I could be misremembering and mixing it up with another sci-fi holiday.
Well, there's a fruit who knows where her towel is.
I can't find a whole big one. I don't even know the names of them. Oh well. I'll just look at that later.
The one thing I will say for the movie, this still cracks me up when I see it. I mean, one of my favorite the reason why I knew I was reading a really special book when I read Hitchhiker's Guide was when it described the Vogon ships. Like the Vogon ships floated in the air in the way that bricks don't. And like, yeah, like that's a great line. It's full of ones like that. But what I really loved about the so that's the destruction of Earth scene in Hitchhiker's Guide to the Galaxy. It's actually really early in the movie. Well, I guess it's early in the book too. But there's the basically you've got this, like, you've seen this movie every single time you've seen an end of the world movie. The camera starts pulling out to show the destruction, but in this one they cue like the orchestra stings da 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 da, each time it goes out, and then they just like milk that thing for a good 5 minutes, continuing to go further and further out through the Vogon ships. And I'm like, okay, this is actually pretty funny, but it's a shame. Do either of you play Stellaris?
I have time to time. It's been a bit since I've tried diving into it again. It overwhelms me. I think I've talked to you about that before, SystemChalk.
I have not.
Yeah, I'm not ready to talk about this on a public forum, but there might be something that is of interest to you that we can talk about shortly after that may be related.
And I looked it up. Towel Day is May 25th.
All right, so we now know that your birthday is either early May or mid-June.
So, yeah, that's and that's it. And then that's the end of the cast, pretty much.
I think we can all agree that SystemChalk was right.
Yeah.
I'm not getting invited back. Can I take a quick... I know I've taken so much of that. Please, nobody do an analysis of the number of minutes spoken by each guest. I will
do it.
Be really sad. Especially because I'm really grateful that these two invited me. Do you mind if I take a second and give the movies I was struggling over on for number 2, just because I would really love it if people would watch these?
Sure. Yeah, we can do it. We'll give you 10 seconds now.
I can do it in 10 seconds.
Yeah.
So Avatar was one of the runner-ups that I know everybody was going to get mad about. Minority Report, Primer.
Oh,
I think
a good one.
DPayne. Yeah, DPayne is
that was
lol,
close.
I like smart person movies. The remake of Solaris, because I think that is highly underrated. That Steven Soderbergh did a version of Solaris starring George Clooney. Gattaca, another underappreciated movie by Andrew Niccol, who originally wrote The Truman Show but did not get to direct it because Jim Carrey is very expensive. Men in Black, which I think probably doesn't get enough respect as a science fiction movie. A Scanner Darkly, which I know everybody likes talking about Blade Runner, but that is a much more personal book by Philip K. Dick, and I think it's a very good...
I watched it. I owned it.
I should watch it. I saw it and I was like, oh, right, this this is on another list of movies I haven't seen yet.
And finally, for the Ex Machina fan who likes Alex Garland, Sunshine, which was written by Alex Garland and directed by Danny Boyle. A lot of people are quite harsh on the ending, but I think it is a very well done science fiction.
I remember hearing about it, and I just never got around to watching it. So, yeah. Where do you put Apollo 13 on there?
Oh, good question. I mean, I'm
trying to remember. Wait, is that the one where they go send the oil riggers up the blow? No, that's Armageddon.
Why couldn't they just train astronauts to?
I love that audio clip.
Because you can't kill Bruce Willis if he doesn't go up.
That's James Cameron's answer for why there wasn't enough room for Leonardo DiCaprio on the door. He says, "Oh, it's very simple because the script says that Jack dies on page 147." But those are definitely movies that if you haven't seen them, I know it's really easy I think it's really easy for everybody to everybody's got really long lists. So when I was coming up with my runners up, sort of trying to think of stuff where it's like, if I wanted to come up with recommendations on like why people like sci-fi, I think this is a pretty decent little short list. I know Avatar is on there, so some people are not going to agree with the representativeness.
You didn't put Star Wars, so you're good.
I did put Minority Report in that as well, right?
Yeah. You did.
Yeah, you did.
But yeah, I mean, the one thing I like about it is that it does a pretty good job of showing the diversity of the genre. It doesn't have a space fantasy in there, I guess, but I think on top of it too, like it's there's a lot. You could almost do like 8 episodes around science fiction movies, just limiting it to, particular subgenres.
Yeah, there's movies that I was thinking about suggesting, and I'm kind of holding off because, well, let's just say one of my movies that I was about to put down was actually, I can say it because probably won't show up for another. This topic won't show up for another couple months. But 12 Monkeys was on my list originally.
Did you see the short that it was based off of, La Jetée?
I watched the behind the scenes, and I saw them talk about it.
It's about 20 minutes. It's pretty good.
Yeah. So 12 Monkeys, I really enjoyed. I didn't watch the TV show, and then I almost put Event Horizon to this space.
I hated that movie.
I just love the absurdity of it. I know it kind of ruins my argument of what I was saying because it's not a very smart movie, but I just really like it. Yeah, it's kaiju movies for sure. That's also why I like Cloverfield, because it's got a dumb kaiju monster in it.
Maybe I would have liked it more if there was a mech in it.
Oh yeah, no, if there was a mech in there as well, like it would be the coolest thing if that was the prequel to Pacific Rim. And it's just like, here's the human side of it, and then you got stinking whatever, all the kaiju. Well, you got the kaiju, and then you got a Jaeger coming out of the Statue of Liberty, just saying, "What's up, sucker?"
Listen. Cloverfield 2, Lady Liberty's Revenge. Strong female character. Let's greenlight this. We need new heroes.
Does she have her head?
Well, you have to pay to find out.
Oh no, I don't like pain.
No, I do appreciate a good kaiju. It's been a while since I've watched any.
I'm adding kaijus to the list.
Oh no, I don't know if I've watched enough kaijus.
You got time. We got 3 months until we get to the item on here. I just saw we have Wawa on here. Oh wait, did we? No, that was wedding songs.
I hope you two have played Into the Breach if you have this great love for that genre.
I heard of it. I haven't got to it yet. What kaiju movies?
There's a Korean film that I'm thinking of, and I don't know if it's considered a kaiju, and I can't remember.
What's it called?
I forget. I have to look it up. I watched it when I was younger. It's by the same director that did Parasite, but it's his
Oh God, I used to be really good with Korean movies. I really loved Old Boy. Oh,
that's one I've been meaning to watch.
Yeah.
It's not sci-fi, so
I watched both. Really... and I read the manga, and I'm just like, oh.
What's the...
Given what you said about Star Wars, I don't know if you liked that.
Oh, yeah. No, that's... We want to talk... Never mind. That's like a huge spoiler for that.
Yeah, I'm trying to be coy about it.
Is it Pulgasari?
I didn't realize he directed Snowpiercer. That's a movie I've been meaning to watch.
Oh, I love that movie too.
The Host.
Okay, I think I heard of that.
You know, Andrew Niccol of Truman Show and Gattaca fame also made a movie called The Host, but it sure as hell isn't the same one we're talking about.
I think it's technically it's not listed as a kaiju on IMDb, but there's a monster in it, so I'm gonna say.
I did not actually realize that was the same director. He's
a pretty
Willy Wonka's Snowpiercer's just Willy Wonka.
That's what I have heard, but I do want to watch it.
I like it. What I like about Snowpiercer, because the comics are from what I heard very dumb. But just the Snowpiercer, I think, is a very good example of just building a world, and that world is just a train. It's I don't know. It's just, yeah, I don't know. I don't want to go into it because I can go into it for a while, but Snowpiercer is another, it's just another one just to sit there and just imagine the world that is being built here. So
it's me, Anime. Don't let Valiant Cheese see that you wrote that. I'm kind of glad he wasn't here to hear somebody's overrated movie. I'll
say it again.
I was gonna say it's funny that you mentioned that the comics are not good, because I haven't read them, but I think it was Alfred Hitchcock actually said that bad books make excellent movies, and it seems like one of these cute things that directors say, but I think one of the really big things about this is that if you think about bad books, they are a little more action, like not action as in like shooting guns, but like behavior driven. And they don't play to the strength, which is of course the arrangement of the words and the communications of thoughts. But that works really, really well for movies. And then there's a lot of movies that probably would have done much better as books because, you've got this interminable voiceover, kind of like what you're hearing right now. Sorry, guys. But, you've got, it's really clear that they probably wanted to write a book. And, they didn't. They wrote a screenplay because it paid better or whatever. And, now I need to sit through some boring voiceover rather than have the action be shown. So it's funny, actually. Some really rough material can actually wind up being really good movie fodder.
It's very much like how what's his name, Kojima wants to just make movies with his video games, but then it's like, man, Death Stranding as a movie would be terrible. I love that game, but oh my gosh, it would be the worst movie because there's just so much stuff in there. And then, like, I don't know, just how are you saying, like, how bad, like the Alfred Hitchcock line, bad books make good movies. It's just very interesting when, like, looking at games and stuff. It's just David Cage. That guy just wants to make movies, but I guess he got told no and now has to make these games. And it's like, what's wrong with David Cage? He literally said if a player gets a game over scene, that's a failure on the creator of the video game. And then he came out with like Beyond Two Souls, where you literally cannot game over. You can put the controller down on a QuickTime event and it will just continue looping as Ellen Page gets stabbed multiple times. And she's like, I'm good. Bring it on. I'm waiting for you to come on, guy. Pick up this controller. Come. Ow, please. Okay. It's just, oh man, that's what I was thinking of while you were making the very smart thing. And then I was just thinking of that.
Well, I mean, there are ways to lose movies. I mean, if you're sitting in the movie theater during Cloverfield, you've already lost. So.
It got me twice. So, but yeah, guys, that's I guess we're gonna call it an episode.
No quiz? There. No, I'm kidding. No. Super generous with your time.
We replaced the quiz with a little bit of the introduction of you. Thank you. Speaking about you, you wanna
welcome to our first and last guest.
Do you want to plug my socials? Yeah. Oh, hold on. Before we go on, in case people came in late, we always review and just say what our top and least favorite was. So since how about we'll do this? You can go first and then plug your socials, and then we'll go around.
All right. I will plug my socials first because I would like all of you to follow, and then please don't unfollow when I infuriate you. No, I'm primarily on Twitch, twitch.tv/SystemChalk. I'm probably not as thoughtful as I am with these two fine people because they certainly bring out at least the talkative side of me. The talkative side of me was I brought, but definitely they elevated the topics. I do tweet every once in a while, twitter.com/SystemChalk. But what I would love is if more people read my stuff. You can read my blogs at systemchalk.ca. That'll just redirect you to a WordPress site. It's like systemchalk.wordpress.com. But you will find many opinions, some about movies. The movie ones aren't so good, but there's some game opinions there too. You won't be bored, I think is the fair statement. But my recap. So instead of saying bad, because there's lots of bad movies which you will not have heard of, and I am wasting yours and my time to continue reiterating those, were Pitch Black and Cloverfield. Again,
we talked about Pitch Black.
It was so long ago, huh?
Overrated doesn't necessarily mean that they are poorly crafted. In fact, my experience is that usually, very talented crews can make perfectly forgettable movies. But certainly movies that I don't think were worth the effort or the attention that they got, let alone the multiple sequels spawned by both. And in terms of my top two, position number 2 is 2001: A Space Odyssey, and I suppose you'll just have to listen to the podcast to see the reasons why. And the top spot went to The Terminator.
I'm just thinking of Vin Diesel. Let me out.
Just Vin Diesel.
Twitch.tv/SystemChalk.
Hey, Hop.
All right. Yeah. So my least favorites, personally, my runner-up was Her, and then my least favorite, I think, after discussion, ended up being Star Wars. And then my 2 favorites, runner-up, was Akira, and then my number 1 is Eternal Sunshine of the Spotless Mind.
All right. And I just remembered Maze Runner as one of the ones I wanted to put in the bad one. With Valorant. Anyway. Whatever. That's a different subject. And my bad ones were Interstellar and Dune. And my good ones was Ex Machina and Arrival. It was so long ago, I forgot Interstellar was even an option that I said. So, yeah, and if you guys are like, well, why'd they say that one? Well, guess what? This episode will be out next Monday, for y'all to listen to, if you so choose. If you just type in Pointless Discourse, I think in Google, it should show up.
Or on your favorite podcasting platform.
Go to that one. We're still trying to find out if iTunes would like us, because they haven't got. Well, hold on, I can find out real quick. Did they? While we're doing this.
Well, you were checking Audible rather than the iBook store for your Hitchhiker's Guide to the Galaxy experience, so I wouldn't expect a call back from.
Yeah, because I know Anchor FM does publish to a lot of places. The big ones that I'm aware of that we're definitely on are like Spotify and Google Podcasts.
Mm-hmm. Yep. We won't have a topic. Normally we would roll a dice to find out what our next talking points are. However, the next talking point is actually the community cast, where if you guys want to send in questions, whether you want us to clarify something you heard us say in a previous episode, or ask us kind of anything, like whether it was, I don't know, the creation of the podcast, streaming questions, YouTube questions, any kind of question to an extent, we will answer it, and we will do the same with quizzes. So just feel free, if you guys are listening to this later, just go to twitter.com/pointlessdisco, where we're there, and we will see you guys post things at us if that's what you choose to do. I just realized, I wonder if the DMs are open on that. And we keep telling people to send us, and the DMs are
I think default they're open, but we can double check that.
Yeah, that's when we finish this. And yeah, so, but the other reason, normally we do TF Tuesdays. Seeing at the time, I don't know if we're still doing TF Tuesdays.
Team Fortress Tuesdays?
Yeah. No, not Team Fortress. I heard team, and I was like, sure. And then, wait, that second one ain't right.
Team your 16-digit credit card number and the 3 numbers on the back, please.
No. Yeah, so Team Fight Tactics do not appear to be open. All right. I will change that as soon as the podcast is finished. But yeah, for you guys who don't know, this Saturday we are running a charity event. Well, I'm running a charity event, and where we would normally be recording the podcast at 3 p.m. Eastern Standard Time to kind of 5-ish. We're actually doing Team Fight Tactics during that part. Hop will be there, and I don't know, she's decided to sabotage what I'm doing. So in Team Fight Tactics. Normally that's what I do. So yeah. I don't know. Hop, is there anything that I'm forgetting or anything you want to say to the mass amounts of peoples?
Nothing else that I can think of. I did just activate receive messages from anyone on our Twitter, so that should at least be fixed.
Oh God, all the capital letters. Help.
Yeah.
I guess the usual is sorry. Yes, this episode is a bit out of schedule usually. So going forward, as far as we know, we'll be back on Saturdays, 3 p.m. Eastern time if you want to catch us live while we're doing this. Otherwise, yeah, all recorded episodes go up on Mondays. Yeah.
Yeah, I think that's it. So, yeah. Bye-bye.